This is Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily with Andrew Hustler Patterson and Michael Remis.
Hey now, welcome to another edition, a Monday edition of Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Michael Remis here in the host chair for Hustler. He's on his way back watching that riveting Week 18 game between the Chiefs and the Raiders. So pumped to be here today. Connor Hrabchak going to join me shortly as we discuss the Winnipeg Jets coming off a loss on Saturday to Ottawa, their 9th straight loss. 0 points on this Eastern road trip. Right now, 15, 21, and 4. At the bottom of the NHL standings, 32nd. You know, they've had some positives, but just inconsistency from game to game or within the game inconsistency hurting them. You look at that second period, Adam Lowry was not a fan of that one yesterday. And for a team with so many veterans, still can't put together a 60-minute game. We're at the halfway point of the season. Scott Arneal seemed to think post-game on Saturday, the Winnipeg Jets are capable of pulling off a win streak, a team that hasn't won consecutive games since November, but time running out. We did have Winnipeg Jets GM Kevin Cheveldayoff address the media for his annual mid-season address earlier today. Shout out to Winnipeg Jets YouTube for streaming that, TSN as well. On top of it, on their website, we will have some clips from that shortly. As Winnipeg Jets as well, without Logan Stanley suspended after a sucker punch to Ottawa Senators captain Brady Tkachuk. That was also on Saturday. And we do have to mention what a evening it was last night in TV, sports watching. If you had multiple screens, I was thankful to have two going. The final NFL game of the regular season between the Steelers and Ravens, and also Canada and Czechia in the World Juniors. Just two excellent semifinal games yesterday. Sweden and Finland, the opener, and Canada and Czechia, where Canada loses the World Juniors, loses at the World Juniors to Czechia for the third year in a row. Incredible stuff. We're going to talk about all that with Connor Hrabchak, but first, got to give a shout out to our sponsors. Wouldn't be here talking to you without the help of these fine folks. Uptown Alley, I was actually there with the family outing on Saturday. Was excellent. Rolly's Transfer, St. Vital Dental, Canadian Club, Princess Auto, Chud's Power Sports. If you're having some fun with the Chud's Power Sports Power Pole, Manitoba Battery, Clean Line. We'll get to the Clean Line lines from practice shortly. Little Brown Jug, been enjoying some of those over the holidays. Boston Pizza, a great place to watch both those games yesterday. And Royal Sports, if you want to get suited up for, well, the ODR or Canada at the Olympics, check out Royal. And, of course, CoolBet. And do have to mention the final poker qualifier on Wednesday. We got a tournament Wednesday night. And then next Monday, a week today, the tournament where the winner will be going with Hustler and Jeff Hamilton to Costa Rica. I got to bring in Connor, but first, a couple super chats. Shout out to these legends in chat. T. Will said, in response to the Chevy press conference, this team and fan base are drowning in the middle of a lake, and Chevy spent half an hour sitting in a boat next to us describing the water. And Tico and Apolli with a very, very generous super chat saying the organization's a circus. There's no accountability, no moves. Make some changes. And that's what Tico Napoli has to say with his super chat. Well, let me get to Connor Hrabchak, who had a very well-received edition of WST Sunday Live yesterday with Liz. Post-game as well. We're having some social media content for us. Connor, welcome. How's it going? Thanks. Great to have you on with me today. Looking forward to the next, hour and 50 minutes.
Yeah, me too. And these Monday shows are always super fun, Remo. There's always tons to talk about coming out of the weekend. But the biggest thing to talk about, the chat's on fire today. Kevin Cheveldayoff's press conference. Obviously, everyone is fired up. You read the 2 super chats there. Cheveldayoff's midseason address has always been a big thing. But 32nd in the NHL, 9 straight losses. This one was going to be maybe the most watched or the most received one yet. And just taking a quick glance at the chat, I don't think the general consensus is or people are fired up from what Kevin Cheveldayoff had to say. So we have clips. We're going to dive into it, what he said. I was there and asked him a question about drafting and developing, which was a thing that Liz and I talked about at length on Sunday, which it continues to be something for this team. And there's a lot to get into, Remis. So I'm excited to be here on this Monday and filling in for Huss, who, like you said, watched that riveting NFL game, Chiefs Raiders. I kind of feel bad for him, but he'll be back tomorrow.
Hey, so yeah, Hustler, I talked to him on the phone. He's got some thoughts about the Cheveldayoff press conference, some thoughts about the Winnipeg Jets 9-game losing streak. And this is a tough stretch for them, Connor. You got Vegas Tuesday night, tomorrow night at home, Thursday, Edmonton, Friday, LA, Sunday, New Jersey, and a week Tuesday, the 13th, the New York Islanders. So it doesn't look to be getting any easier with some big heavy hitters coming in here. So I'm not sure when this losing streak will be snapped, but this is getting to the territory of longest in 2.0 history.
Yes, it's already the longest in 2.0 history, Remo. It's getting to the longest in franchise history. So the Atlanta Thrashers right now are saving us from saying that it's the longest losing streak in franchise history. Mm-hmm. But in 2.0 history, that just continues. 9 straight losses. And yeah, like you said, 3 teams that are coming in here this week: Vegas, LA, Edmonton. Big games for the Winnipeg Jets. They've lost 9 straight. They need some wins. And these are 3 teams that I believe LA is technically outside of a playoff spot right now, but 3 great teams in the Pacific. LA always seems to give the Jets problems as well. So it's going to be a very interesting week here with the Jets at home, 5-game homestand against 5 really good teams. And, on Sunday, Liz and I speculated that maybe the 2 days off heading into Tuesday's game against Vegas would spark some change, players on waivers, anything, any kind of change. And here we are. Not really anything has changed or is projected to change going into tomorrow night's game against Vegas. The Jets, I guess you could say they changed their lines a little bit, but seems to be they're doing that every single period so far this season. So not much changing for this Winnipeg Jets team as they embark on a 5-game homestand against 5 really good teams and look to snap this 2.0 longest losing streak right now, which is at 9. And they just seem to be digging themselves deeper into that 32nd spot in the NHL and making themselves more comfortable down there.
Yeah, the one time we're thankful for Thrashers records, Connor, although Leslie mentions in chat the Winnipeg NHL endless win streak going, he says 30. There were some lean years of the Jets.
Think we'll hit that?
1.0 era. I said Friday. It is WST night. We'll be there. WinnipegJets.com/WST against the Kings. Although you mentioned the Kings do give the Jets fits, as we've seen. We were at the Jets-Kings game last year for WST night, or it was 2 years ago, and it did not go well. But let's get to the press conference. That's what everyone is talking about. Everyone wants to speak about in chat, and start out with a bit of a banger. Kelly Moore of CJOB asking the Winnipeg Jets GM, Kevin Cheveldayoff, how would he characterize this season?
Would it be too extreme, or would it be accurate to call what we've seen so far an unmitigated disaster?
Well, again, certainly, you go into the season, you have obviously very high expectations. I think every team that goes in, feels they have that opportunity to, spread their wings and try to compete, for a Stanley Cup. We've said it all along. First and foremost, your first job is to, find a way to get into the playoffs, and that comes with the ability to go through a season and earn your way to that. To this point, obviously, it's been very disappointing. We have not, I think to a man, top to bottom, and it starts with me, I think everyone would feel like there's a level of responsibility here that, we need to find a way to be better. So, again, we're at the halfway point, and your record is your record, and all you can do is control what's in front of you. And, again, adversity is part of this game. It's part of life. The art in it is how you handle it, and I think that's the thing. You can choose, any different direction. But when I woke up this morning, for me, the choice is put your head down and find a way to keep pushing this team to get better. And I think everybody has to adopt that mentality. So, again, very disappointed. Didn't necessarily see it coming, but if you look at all the different things, it's a tough league to win in, and certainly the situation that we're in with, be it 1-goal games, be it giving not maybe playing to the defensive structure that has become our signature for the last couple of years. All of a sudden you find yourself in this predicament.
There he is, Kevin Cheveldayoff, in response to the question by CJOB's Kelly Moore. Is this season an unmitigated disaster, where the Winnipeg Jets went from starting 2025 in first place, winning the President's Trophy, have a goal of playoffs following that up, and here we are, Connor, in last place, comfortably 32nd in the NHL. What was your... what do you think? Is this season an unmitigated disaster? And what did you think of the general manager's response?
I mean, how could it not be almost, 32nd in the NHL? You have like a 5-point gap between you and the Chicago Blackhawks, who have been at the bottom of the NHL year after year after year, and Bedard and Nazar and all of these talented players for them are hurt, and they're still finding ways to just win hockey games, and you're not finding ways to win hockey games. So I would say I would lean more towards yes than no. Absolutely. I think where a lot of the frustration comes from today is in that very first answer there. You heard Kevin Cheveldayoff say it starts with me, top to bottom. We all have a responsibility to be better. And he said it starts with me. And as the press conference went on, he was asked many, many times, and we'll get into the clips, about, the burden of the fans being on his shoulders, and does he wear any responsibility for that? And he kind of alluded to it. And then he was asked about the offseason signings and letting Ehlers and Appleton go and bringing in the veterans that they did. And, he said that he thinks they have another level they could get to. So he said it starts with him. And then as the press conference went on, it's almost like he was given opportunities to outline where it starts with him, but never really jumped on it. Never really said, the offseason signings, they all need to be better. And I wasn't good enough in the offseason, or I haven't been good enough in the last 18 to 24 months. And I think that's where a lot of the anger comes from, is sort of a lack of accountability. And I mean, the unmitigated disaster part of it, I don't know if I expect an NHL GM to come up and say, this season has been an unmitigated disaster, but it would kind of be nice, because it shouldn't be acceptable when you have Connor Hrabchak, Mark Scheifele, Kyle Connor, Josh Morrissey all in their prime. And I'm not saying Kevin Cheveldayoff said it was acceptable, but it just didn't seem like there was much urgency, other than the fact that they're going to keep the same roster here, not make any changes, not put anyone on waivers, and just kind of hope that they get better and turn things around, and their best players can kind of drag them out of it. That was my biggest takeaway from it, Remis. There wasn't really that that, yeah, we know we all need to be better and this season is a disappointment and we're not okay with this. It just kind of seemed like, yeah, we like the players we have and we're going to keep it rolling here. And when he was asked about waivers, which we'll get into in a second here, didn't really say much at all on that front either. What was your kind of biggest takeaway from it?
Yeah, I'm not really sure what I was expecting. What we've seen from Kevin Cheveldayoff doing press conferences over the last 15 years. I've watched a lot of them, and I thought this was time that you come out and, as you said, take some accountability. Just say, hey, this isn't acceptable. We're going to do better, and we're actively looking at ways to improve our processes. And there really wasn't any of that. There wasn't any hope sold about them turning around. It was more like, hey, we can get better internally. And I think that's something that's so, I don't know, disappointing, frustrating, or maybe doesn't give you the optimism is, this is a team that's prided itself on being so good at drafting and developing. And, they keep trotting out the same lineup over and over again that's on a 9-game losing streak. And, they have these prospects with the Moose. They've kind of been sold they're going to be getting an opportunity, and we haven't seen any roster changes at all. And I mean, if you're a prospect that can't get a call up on the worst team in the NHL, I mean, how should you be feeling, or what does it say to other GMs around the league about how this team feels about those prospects? I saw a tweet about Darren Dreger on Barn Burner. Saying, though, the Jets are shopping around Heinola or Lambert. I mean, who's really going to be interested in those guys? Ville Heinola was on waivers. Yeah, he was a first-round pick however long ago, but I think his value is probably zero. And, same with Brad Lambert. Yeah, he was a first-round pick, was a high prospect in his draft year. But I don't know what anyone is going to give up for those guys. So as far as the press conference goes, I thought it fell short, but it was kind of status quo, and that's what it seems like the Jets are going to go with, and kind of hope they're going to play the same lineup and hope that it seems to get better or improve, or maybe they get a couple bounces and win some of these 1-goal games.
Yeah, I mean, that's what they're going for there. And I echo your thoughts. That was largely what my long rant on Sunday Live was about this weekend, was the whole Brad Lambert thing. And it's like, if he can't get called up and play on the worst team in the National Hockey League, what's his value out of market? Like, how are you going to be selling another GM on, yeah, this guy's awesome, but he can't play on a team that's lost 9 straight games and has so many issues scoring. And the bottom 9 is just ineffective night after night. So it's really puzzling. Do you have the clip of my question while we're on it on the draft and develop?
Sure,
because
yeah.
I feel like let's get to that one. So, while we're on the topic of, like Lambert and Heinola and all that.
Yeah, there's a number of questions. Well, here, we'll go in order here.
Sure. And
the next one was, are they looking beyond this 23-man roster for help? And, we do have the lines today. It's what they've been rolling out here in this losing streak. Connor Hrabchak, Perfetti, Taves, Velarde, Barron, Lowry, Niederreiter, Nyquist, Nemestikov, Pearson, Cole Koepke is the extra, Morrissey, DeMello, Sandberg, Pionk, Fleury, Shen, because Logan Stanley, and we'll discuss the 1-game suspension, and Stanley and Miller on the 4th D pair, Hellebuck, Comrie. And, they did, scratch Niederreiter, before the weekend, and Nyquist was the scratch on Saturday. I'm not really sure if these healthy scratches are having much an effect, but we'll see what the result is tomorrow night. But here he is, Winnipeg Jets GM Kevin Cheveldayoff, and if they're looking beyond the 23-man roster.
Well, you're always looking. You're always trying to evaluate, what options, are out there, whether it's internally, whether it's externally. Again, I think if you look around the league, there's lots of teams that, are fighting for their lives right now. There's teams that, are below the line that, like ourselves, that felt they should be above the line. There's lots of those kind of things that are ongoing. At this point in time of the season, most teams, including ourselves, you're having organizational meetings. You're talking about, your own individual situation. You're talking about everyone else's situations where they may go. You're having the conversations, with other managers to see what their short-term and long-term plans are, and you deal with it accordingly. And so again, each and every day in this league is it's a blessing. It's a blessing to be a part of, and each and every day in this league brings its own different challenges.
There he is, Kevin Cheveldayoff. Connor, want to translate that one for me on the 23-man roster?
I mean, yeah.
I don't know. I don't know what he's really going to say to that question. If they're like, yeah, we're looking at making trades. I'm not sure what I was expecting. And we do have a poll. What did you think of the press conference? The options gave me confidence, 5%, nothing new, 29%, didn't inspire hope, 29%, and actively made it worse. I don't know what it is referring to in that poll. Maybe your feeling about the team going forward. That's what
Everything.
most people said. I'm not sure what the takeaways are on that question. But there we have Winnipeg Jets GM Kevin Cheveldayoff talking to the media today. And if you're looking for some accountability or reasons for optimism, I don't think he provided those.
I don't think so either. And just to this 23-man roster question, and there's other ones here. Mike McIntyre asked about waivers as well. It's interesting because Dave Minuk, who's going to be on the program later today, asked a question about, if you were to look to the Manitoba Moose for call-ups, would you be looking more at veterans or some of the prospects that are currently on the team? And Kevin Cheveldayoff, went into the answer a little bit and then went off and started talking about how on this team right now, they have a lot of experienced veterans who have done it in the past and maybe aren't living up to their expectation right now. And it just feels like we have a full half season of that happening now, to the point where, these guys have all done it in the past. Tanner Pearson did it in 2016, 10 years ago, but it's 2026. And there's kind of a lack of admission of living in the present here with these waiver questions, at least in my opinion, where he's referencing the veterans and what they've done in the past and the adversity that they need to go through. It's like, are they really, do we have faith in this team to push through this adversity in the back half of the season, and Tanner Pearson and Gustav Nyquist and Jonathan Taves to turn back the clock? I just don't know. I feel like we have a large enough sample of the bottom nine being ineffective and Scott Arneal changing the lines period by period because nothing's working, nothing's going. And for him to, answer all of the waiver questions by we're looking, but the veterans on this team have proven it in the past and kind of deserve it. It falls under this whole thing of they're last in the league. They've lost 9 straight and no player decision has been made. And it doesn't seem like a player decision is being made. And I thought Mike prefaced his question. I'm excited to have him on later. He prefaced his question by saying, there have been young players up, but that was due to injury. Why haven't there been any performance-based roster moves yet? And, Kevin Cheveldayoff, like I just said in many of my answers, went on about, the players being here and the veterans and having faith in this group where you've lost 9 straight. You got a 4-point gap between you and 31st place in the NHL. It just feels hopeless right now, at least by my eyes. And those questions about waivers and looking for help outside of the current 23-man roster were the biggest kind of tells for me.
Yeah, you got some Chevy speak saying, adversity happens. We're going to keep grinding. We have this group here. Are they going to reset or retool? It seems like they're just rolling forward, with this same lineup, hoping that eventually they'll pull out a win. And, we don't really know how, are there consequences for underperformance, as we've seen with a lack of call-ups or, waiver players sent down or trades. And are they looking at changing their approach? And I thought, Connor, you asked, a question because part of the reason why the Jets are in this situation is, for a team that has called themselves a draft and develop team organization, not a lot of players on the current roster drafted over the last 10 years. And to be fair, they traded away picks for Nina Ryder. They traded away picks for Nemesnikov. And
Monahan, Toffoli.
There's been, they've traded first round picks. But you can clearly see in this roster that, there's no one pushing. And this was the question you asked at the end. about what if there's any concern for that. And here's your question.
Since 2017, Perfetti and Sandberg are the only 2 draft picks that are on this team currently. Given the fact that there are no prospects really kicking the door down right now, and you're an organization that prides itself on drafting and developing, is there any concern for you growing in your organization's ability to do that?
Well, again, I do think we do have some players that are, ready to kick the door down, so to speak. If you look at, a player like Solomonson, I think he's closer, obviously, than you think. But for his shoulder injury last year, he might have had, even a bigger opportunity. You look at the development of a Josh Morrissey and how that period of time, in the American Hockey League, helped him. But even still, when he got into the National Hockey League, it took a little while for him to become Josh Morrissey. But I think you look at 2 prospects that we have playing in the World Juniors right now in Boumediene and Frey, and both of them are playing big roles, in their team's quest for the gold medal. But certainly it is a concerning thing when you've traded a bunch of draft picks, or some of the draft picks that you've made haven't gotten to that level. That's something that again, as an organization, they are your lifeblood, and maybe not having some guys totally ready force us to make some decisions in the summer that that we did, and again, some of those things work, some of those don't. Some of them are still a work in progress, but again, you're as a manager, I think you guys were someone want to ask the question. You got to have a panoramic type of vision as well, and I do think we were hyper focused these last bunch of years here on the now, and again, rightfully so, because that the group of guys played their way into that, and the group of guys that are playing right now will help us forge our path or make our decisions accordingly at the right time. But that's why, again, it's the adversity that, whether you're in the American Hockey League and or whether in the National Hockey League, it's how you handle it, and when you get your opportunity, you better be ready.
There's a response from Winnipeg Jets GM Kevin Cheveldayoff to Connor's question if he's concerned about the lack of players on the NHL roster that they've drafted over the last 10 years. And I don't know what you wanted to hear from that one, or if that answer is satisfied. But what did you think of what he had to say about that?
I think this answer, the question and answer, kind of in a way explains the disconnect between the management group and the coaching staff and the fans right now, because a part of that answer was Salomonson. He brought up Elias Salomonson first, and he's like, he might be closer than you think. But all the fans think he's ready right now. And all the fans think, you're rotating Luke Shen and Colin Miller on your third pair night after night after night and not getting good results. And you're just going with that, like it's good enough. Meanwhile, Elias Salomonson is approaching 75 games played in the American Hockey League, and he can't crack the 32nd best team in the NHL, whose third pair right shot defenseman changes night after night after night. And I think that kind of explained the disconnect a little bit, where he mentioned Elias Salomonson and even brought up Josh Morrissey, that, he played in the AHL, but when he got to the NHL, it still took a few years. Well, when you're the last place team in the National Hockey League, that's generally kind of a good time to get those few NHL years that might be rough out of the way. And if you're rotating guys in and out of your third pair every night because they're making mistakes, would you not rather have a 22-year-old making those mistakes than a 36-year-old? And kind of let the rookie develop, if you will, and shelter him a little bit. So I think this is kind of, I wanted to ask about the draft and develop thing because it's something Liz and I talked about at length on Sunday. And I think, him bringing up Elias Salomonson and saying he might be closer than you think. Well, no, the fans think that he's close enough to be on the worst team in the National Hockey League. And I think that kind of explained it a little bit, Remis. I don't know what your takeaway was from it.
Yeah. He must not be that close if he can't crack this lineup. Correct. And how much worse would the results be with him in there? I was hoping they'd say, you know what, our drafting record, hasn't been where we'd want it to be. We're evaluating on ways we can improve, and we're going to try to be better. Mm-hmm. I think that would have been sufficient. Just some acknowledgments, because look, they're not like Dallas or Vegas, who's coming in, who can go and sign free agents. So I don't know. I'm not really sure like what they're going to do if they're not going to call anyone up at this point in the middle of a 9-game losing streak, and I don't know when their next win is going to come. But that was you getting in there at the end of the press conference. There's some more questions, some more topics to discuss. We're going to talk with Mike McIntyre, but first I'll throw it to Hustler.
Hey, folks, with the holidays here, many of you are looking to gather with friends and family, people coming in from out of town. Maybe you're getting together for something fun with people from the office. Why don't you head down to Uptown Alley in 1301 St. Matthews and take advantage of all the amazing options for fun that Todd, Nate, and the gang have waiting for you down at Uptown Alley. 5-pin bowling, 10-pin bowling, laser tag, an incredible arcade. Now, those fun carnival games where you can win prizes, win tickets to exchange for great prizes. And what a lot of people don't know is the incredible food and beverage options waiting for you at Uptown Alley. Now, listen, if you want to plan a party or an event, just give them a call at 488-0000. For group and corporate events, just pick your activities, pick your meal and what you want to eat, any add-ons, and their events team will help together put to a schedule and take care of everything else. They're also the best place if you are planning birthday parties for kids, teens, or adults. They've got the Bowl and Play special, the daily deal after 9 p.m. every day. And, of course, they've also got gift cards, which the gift of fun is always perfect for the stocking or under the tree. So while you get ready to cross off everything on that Christmas list, not only pop down to take advantage of the good times at Uptown Alley, but give the gift of good times with Uptown Alley gift cards this Christmas. They're waiting for you at 1301 St. Matthews Avenue and online at uptownalley.ca. If you're moving into 2026, our friends at Rollies Transfer would love to help you take as much of the stress out of the moving experience as possible. We all know what that can be like. Rollies, family owned and operated, and the most trusted name in moving in Manitoba. Check them out online at rollies.com, and in the top right corner, click on Request an Estimate. Put in the promo code WST for a special discount on moving services and moving supplies. Then simply let them know when and where you're planning on moving, what needs to go. They'll turn it around with a great quote and get you locked in for the white glove treatment that Rollies Transfer has been famous for. Now into their 7th decade. For all your moving needs, lean on the most trusted name in the game, Rollies Transfer. Find out more, request an estimate today over at rollies.com. If you do need your grill worked on, Dr. Terry and the great people at St. Vital Dental Center have been getting rave reviews from WSTers that have popped in there. Now, St. Vital Dental Center has been serving generations of Winnipeggers and Manitobans, and now have a beautiful new facility at 167 St. Anne's with state-of-the-art equipment and convenient free parking right behind the building, serving clients from 6 months to 99 plus with a full array of dental services from cleanings and checkups all the way to things like dental implants. They can do it all. Find out more online, make an appointment, pop in and see Dr. Terry and the gang at St. Vital Dental Center online at stvitaldental.ca, and make sure to tell them that you're ready for the marble race on Friday afternoon and the boys at Winnipeg Sports Talk sent you. And just before we head down to Dallas, as we mentioned, there's lots of planning for the holidays coming up over the next little bit. I'm certain that many of you will be popping into your local Manitoba liquor marts. When you do, check out the Canadian Club display. We're going to get to the Bomber schedule and look ahead to next season. There still is a few limited quantities of those Blue Bomber limited edition label bottles, which is a great gift for a Blue Bomber fan or just for entertaining in and around the holidays. And while you're talking Canadian Club at the holidays, make sure to keep your eyes out for the limited edition Canadian Club Cranberry Ginger Ale. Right now, in stores and on shelves for the holidays, the great taste of Canada's iconic Canadian whiskey, along with cranberry and ginger ale, pre-mixed cocktails in cans. You can pick it up in 4-packs or 473 milliliter cans at your local Manitoba liquor marts or beer vendors, and then simply crack it, pour over ice, and enjoy. Happy holidays from Canadian Club. And reminder to all of you to do it safely and to never drink and drive.
Looking at the big picture, you could argue you've had your chance, that it's time for a change. What do you say to that?
Again, I think, you look back to where we were, several years ago, and you probably could ask that same question there when, we didn't make the playoffs that season. I think I did, yeah. Yeah, I think you did. And, I think that, again, we took a step back. We looked around and tried to assess things internally, and we found a way to bring that structure and that ability to win those 1-goal games and that back, and probably made disbelievers believers for a period of time. I think again, if you look at this core, it's a strong core. It's a good group of players. A lot of them are still in their prime and are going to be in their prime for a period of time. So I think that again, it's just the opportunity to find some additional players or some additional people that fit to surround that core to make it better, and we're sitting here where we are today, like you say, the record, but again, the opportunities in this league to improve are there for us.
There's Paul Friesen of the Winnipeg Sun asking Jets GM Kevin Cheveldayoff if it's time for someone else to have a turn as GM. The media really bringing out the tough questions today, Connor, but you look at the Winnipeg Jets, I think they're in a pretty tough spot here where you're in 32nd place. However, I think there's some upside there. You have Connor Hrabchak signed for the future. You have Mark Scheifele. You have Kyle Connor, Gabriel Velarde, Josh Morrissey. He's up soon. But I think you have a strong nucleus of a top line. If you can fill around the edges there, they could, bounce back. I think part of that would be getting a top, 3 pick. If that does happen, that would be a huge boost. But the tough questions coming out today for Jets GM Cheveldayoff.
Yeah, for sure. And Chevy, talked about this team, going back to the draft and develop question, he talked about that this team being hyper focused on the now and making moves. And he said that core that you just mentioned, Remis, played their way into having that mindset. And then that leads us to where we are today, where going back to the draft and develop question, he said maybe the prospects not being ready enough led to some of the decisions they had to make in the summer, like signing Tanner Pearson or Gustav Nyquist or Jonathan Taves, because a guy like Brad Lambert wasn't ready to come into this NHL team right now. And despite being 32nd in the NHL, it seems that that's the course of action that they really want to take here with Kevin Cheveldayoff, not really alluding to any moves being on the horizon, at least in the short term for this group. And he said there are opportunities. He even said at some point during the press conference that, he doesn't want to sit up there and say that trades are impossible because there have been trades so far this season. But again, I brought this up on Sunday Live. They're 32nd in the NHL right now. You're essentially announcing to the world that Brad Lambert's not good enough to play on this team. Darren Dreger's bringing up Lambert and Heinola, and we know the connection between Jets management and Darren Dreger. It's like, what can Brad Lambert and Ville Heinola and the, not deep amount of picks that you have really get you for this team right now? And even if you do go make a trade and get someone, you need to play at a 119-point pace the rest of the season to get to 95 points. So which player are you bringing in here to change your team from a 70-point pace team to a 119-point pace team? And, despite the fact that it's highly unlikely they'll play at a 119-point pace and get to 95 points, what player is going to come in here and then just take you from 32nd to 26th and make it so that you're picking 7th next year instead of in the top 3, like you said, Remis, which those picks are very, very valuable in the top 3. We see them all the time making quick impacts in the NHL and sooner and sooner as the years continue to go here. But it didn't seem like Kevin Cheveldayoff inspired much hope that there would be moves on the horizon, whether it's buying or selling.
I was surprised to hear on the intermission of Saturday's game, Elliot Friedman saying the Jets are out there looking for scoring. I just wasn't sure, are they looking to trade away assets to try to make a run at a wild card spot this year? I thought, and what assets do they have? They've traded away, picks, second round picks this year and next year for last year's trade deadline. acquisitions. And, when they were in a tough spot before, they acquired, I'll give him credit, for a couple of years ago when they acquired Brendan Dillon and Nate Schmidt in back-to-back days one summer, that really helped out the defense for a couple of years. But they traded away picks to do that, and I'm not really sure if they're in a position right now to be trading away more picks. Maybe you look around and try to find some, expensive player who doesn't have a no trade or a no move and send a late pick or act as a cap dump. I'm not really sure how the Jets are going to get out of this one here, but it'd certainly be interesting to follow along, Connor.
Yeah, for sure. And that's why this homestand to me, Remis, is so fascinating, with the 5 teams coming in here that are very, they're in playoff spots or right around it. The parity around the league is evident, with every team being, in a couple of points of striking distance of the wild card line. And, if the Jets have lost 9 straight games, Vegas is coming in on Tuesday. You get Edmonton, LA. What if this keeps going and this team continues to ice the same lineup every single night and refuses to make changes? How much hotter will our chat room get? It's already pretty red hot, given what Kevin Cheveldayoff did or didn't do in today's press conference. But how much hotter can this chat room really get with 9 straight losses, 32nd in the NHL, and then the GM comes up and doesn't really inspire much hope and doesn't really take accountability for just how disappointing of a season this is, going from first to worst. Remis, the last time this happened was 1942. It was the New York Rangers, back when the NHL was a 6-team league. So this is what the situation that we're in. And I think the question posed by Kelly Moore that we started off the show with about this being an unmitigated disaster, I mean, there's your answer right there. You're doing something for all the wrong reasons that hasn't been done since the 40s.
Yeah, and one thing, this is going to have a ripple effect for games for the rest of the year. You mentioned this homestand coming up. Tuesday nights always been a bit of a tougher draw, as we've seen, especially in January. I imagine Thursday's game against Edmonton, you're going to have a good crowd for that. It might be a lot more Oiler fans. Friday, who doesn't want to go out for a Friday night? But Chevy was asked about attendance and how much responsibility will he take if people decide, hey, for a team that relies on people going up and trying to sell out, how much responsibility will he take for people if people decide they're not interested in the current product they're offering?
Oh, it's, lots of it's on my shoulders each and every day. Again, you don't just sit there last year and win a President's Trophy and feel like, okay, put your feet up. It's all good. I think, the National Hockey League is a very, it's a very expensive league for people to come and watch. And certainly, again, the players are aware of it too. That's how their salaries are paid. It's the passion that, that pays us all, so to speak. And, you can never, ever take anything in this game for granted, certainly, not the fans. But, I think if you're a true fan of any team, the ups and the downs, and the celebrations and the heartbreaks are all part of fandom. I think that, it's what makes sports, the most unpredictable thing is that. So, again, from a fan perspective, each and every day you try to put the team in the best situation, to succeed. And you just, again, you want to make the city proud. You want to make the fans proud. And you never take anything for granted.
There he is, Winnipeg Jets GM Kevin Cheveldayoff. In conversation today with the media. We'll be talking more on that with Mike McIntyre, who was there asking the tough questions, later on the show. But Connor, the Winnipeg Jets did play on Saturday in Ottawa, and for a team that had, the losing streak, you could say, the first 8, they were all 1-goal games. This one, kind of the same story where you have a whole period, the second, where you don't really show up, and Ottawa was able to take advantage. And special teams that has been so good for the Jets, 0 for 4 on the power play. Ottawa went 2 for 5, proving to be the difference in that one.
Yeah, for sure. And Remis, there was a point in the game where the Jets went 18 minutes without a shot on goal. And I just feel like there are way too many games this year where that is a constant. It's a given where you'll look halfway through the game and the Jets have 6 shots. And, I think back to the Thomas Milic game against the Carolina Hurricanes. And the Jets finished that game with 13 shots on goal, a lot of which came in the third period. And they just weren't really doing much offensively. And it's just, all of these 1-goal games are proving, Remis, that the margin for error for this team as currently constructed is so unbelievably thin. And you look at, the penalty that Logan Stanley took, which I'm sure we'll talk about. Stanley won't be available for the Winnipeg Jets tomorrow because he got suspended a game for that double minor penalty that he took on Brady Tkachuk. But you go back to the Minnesota Wild game, and there was the Dylan DeMello cross-check, and there are just the Utah game where you start Adam Lowry in overtime, and that was a much discussed topic here on Winnipeg Sports Talk, and that decision burns them. It just feels like no matter everything that could go wrong is going wrong for this team right now. We've kind of discussed that so far this season, and it's just the margin for error, and it feels like what they need to do to win needs to be perfect night after night, and it's been hardly that for the last 9 games where, even the Toronto game, they're up 4-1. It looks like they're playing great. They're mostly limiting chances up until that point. The top line's rolling. They're getting secondary scoring. And then it just all falls apart. They give up a goal with 2 seconds left in the period. The third period, there's some costly mistakes. The Eric Comrie one on the game winner for Toronto. And it goes down in the result page as another 1-goal regulation loss. And it's 7 of these 9 games have been 1-goal losses in this 9-game losing streak, one of which one of the 2 that weren't 1-goal losses, Remo, was the 2-1 game against the Oilers where they scored an empty netter and made it 3-1. So you can maybe count that one if you want. But this team was so dynamite at winning 1-goal games last year because of their defensive structure, because of their ability to roll their top 9 and put Adam Lowry out against the opposition's best and all of those things. And this year, that just hasn't been the case for a multitude of reasons. And it seems to be catching up to them and almost getting worse game by game by game, where the players continue to press, and continue to lose by 1 or 2 goals.
Yeah, they looked fresh coming out of the Christmas break, Connor, playing some tight games, but the long end of a road trip here, catching up to them on Saturday. And I wonder, when do these penalties for Logan Stanley become a bit of a concern? 21 minors on the season for a guy who's on your third pair, not playing, a ton of minutes. Second in the league to Nikita Zadorov. Jets just spending a lot of time shorthanded. Dylan DeMello as well. You mentioned he's top 20 in minor penalties. It's funny, I had this conversation with Mike, and Mike was saying, well, some of Stanley's are coincidental penalties, and Dylan DeMello has put them on the ice shorthanded more times. But, the penalties, and you saw that with Stanley on Saturday, getting tangled up with Brady Tkachuk, throwing his gloves down and punching Brady Tkachuk in the face with the bare hand while Brady still had his gloves on, showing everyone after that his hand was in fact wrapped, which means he's ineligible to fight. And anyways, so Stanley, he got suspended 1 game, won't be allowed. What did you think of that altercation there that led to the 1-game suspension?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting altercation for sure, because I brought up this point on Sunday Live. While Logan Stanley's stepping up and tangled up with Brady Tkachuk, there's a 2-on-1 going on behind him. So, I know Brady Tkachuk is ineligible to fight because of the wrap on his hand that you mentioned, Remis, but there's still, the play kept going is my point there. Brady Tkachuk is really good at this. He's been doing this his entire career. Both of the Tkachuks are. There are pests around the league that are very good at baiting other players into taking themselves out of the play to get into a scrum, or baiting them to punch them and all of these things. And I mean, Logan Stanley took a double minor penalty at a key spot in a game where Ottawa scored and extended their lead to a 2-goal lead at the time of the game. And it's just, I talk about the margin for error for this team being so thin. And I just don't think that doing stuff like that is how this team is going to get back into the win column. And I found it interesting, Remis, as well. I tuned into Kenny and Rennie, as I usually do, after that game. And Sean Reynolds was covering the game, Hockey Night in Canada. It was a Sportsnet game. And he said in the second intermission, Brady Tkachuk went to all of his teammates and told them not to get retribution on Logan Stanley in the third period. He'll worry about it another time. He just wants to focus on the 2 points. And that, to me, was kind of eye-opening, where the Winnipeg Jets, you look back at the Dylan DeMello cross-check against the Wild, you look at this punch by Logan Stanley against Brady Tkachuk. At times, it's looked like they're more focused on retribution than they are the 2 points. And that's maybe what's cost them some of these wins here over the past number of games. And the penalties, Remis, the discipline has been such a big problem all season long. You brought up DeMello. He's put the Jets shorthanded a bunch. Taves took another tripping penalty in that Ottawa game. Stanley double minor. It's a problem, the amount of penalties this team is taking when you don't have an elite penalty kill and you don't have as elite of a power play as you did last season. Special teams can dictate games. And that's, a large reason why the Jets won the President's Trophy last year. And I think it's a big reason why they find themselves in the spot they're in. How did you see that whole altercation go down?
Yeah, for a power play that was first last year, it is 17th, 19.1%, and penalty kill near the bottom third of the league, was 21st, 78.3%. I think Logan jumped the gun a little. Maybe he thought Brady was going to throw, and he's like, "Well, I don't want to get hit first. I'm gonna chuck." And it was almost like WWE style, where a guy gets hit. He's like, "No, I have. My hand is wrapped. I can't get in a fight." It was like very theatrical WWE, and he was very hot after that one. But he'll, as you said, cost the team, was unfortunate. And Brady saying in intermission that they're going to get revenge on the scoreboard. If only the Jets and Dylan DeMello had thought of that as Kyle Connor was about to score an empty net against Minnesota. Yeah. And so we do have the game tomorrow against Vegas in a tough spot. Will tomorrow be the night that this losing streak ends? I mean, they're going, when you mentioned the lineup, Connor, trotting out the same guys. At what point, do they try the line option that has never been tried all year and separating Kyle Connor and Mark Scheifele? I think we have to address, it's almost getting crazy at this point to not try it when you're on a 9-game losing streak.
Yeah, I mean, if you're looking for the answer of how many losses it'll take for them to separate those two, we're not there yet. And we're at 9. And we're at the 32nd spot in the National Hockey League. At least that's where the Winnipeg Jets are. So it's quite something. It's interesting that they have yet to do that, Remis, even for a period. Like earlier this season, they did it. I think it was the San Jose game. The Jets were not playing well. Scott Arneal didn't like the way his team played. He made that clear after the game. I think for the third period, they kind of split up Connor and Scheifele for a few shifts. And that's basically all that's happened all season long. If people are wondering about an explanation from the coach, we've asked Scott Arneal about splitting Connor and Scheifele many, many times. And he falls back on the fact that those two are going and he doesn't want to split up the one thing that's going. But at some point, you have nothing going because you've lost 9 straight games. And it's interesting to see. I mean, if this losing streak reaches 10, are they going to split them up? I just don't see a scenario in which they ever do split them up. And I've made this very clear throughout, many Winnipeg sports talks. I want to see it. I mean, they're going to be making $20 million annually between the two of them for the next 6 years after this one. Kyle Connor for the next 8. I'd like to see if they could each drive their own line. The Winnipeg Jets' probably biggest problem this season is that they don't have a second line. And, if you put Kyle Connor on your second line, that might give you a second line. And Mark Scheifele is supposed to be good enough for Team Canada. He should be good enough to drive his own line as well. So I'd like to see them do it, but we have not found the answer yet to the age-old question: how many losses will it take for them to split those two up? It's at 9. Could it make 10? I mean, Vegas has struggled as of late, but maybe the Winnipeg Jets are exactly what they need.
Yeah, and one thing that has plagued the Jets, lack of consistency. Here's Scott Arneal post-game on Saturday on just that.
Yeah, after 9 losses, it's frustrating. It's really frustrating. I'm sure they're frustrated. Coaching staff's frustrated. You know what? It's just, you keep talking about learning lessons. You do things, game to game, and you hope that you build off one into the next one. And you just, we like I mentioned before, we take one step forward, two steps back, and can't do that in this league.
How encouraging is it that the group hasn't quit on each other or started to point fingers or any of those things that often teams that are in the basement can do?
We got 42 games to go, and it's already been a hard ride. And at the end of the day, I still believe that if we ever get our complete 60-minute game together, we can go on a run. we're watching teams around the league go on runs, and it's about putting that first one together and trying to build off it and go. You got to play games in this league. You can't hand them, you can't mail them in. And you know what? We're not going to let these guys quit and not come out and perform, but we need to do it from everybody for 60 minutes.
Scott Arneal on the team's inconsistency. We'll see if that continues tomorrow night against Vegas. Connor, we got Mike McIntyre coming up. We're going to spend more time on the Winnipeg Jets and Kevin Cheveldayoff's press conference today. But first, here's Hustler.
Princess Auto, wonderful support we've received for years from Princess Auto, as they've done for so many of our sporting institutions, including the Winnipeg Blue Bombers and the Winnipeg Jets. Princess Auto, really synonymous with Winnipeg, as they're founded and headquartered right here in the Peg, and now serving Canadians coast to coast with the best deals on the most unique assortment of tools and equipment around. Everything you need to complete the projects on your list or start something new or cross off that special gift for Christmas waiting for you at Princess Auto. In Winnipeg, visit them on Panet Road or Portage Avenue West. Also out in Brandon for our friends at Westman. And as always, you can check out the great deals and shop online 24/7, 365 over at princessauto.com. Speaking of the holidays and a little snow, Terminator and the Chuds gang out of Chuds Power Sports are ready for the snow to fly, and they are ready for the holidays. It's the best gifts don't go under the tree. They come from Chuds Power Sports. Enjoy holly jolly savings across every department. And don't forget to browse their online parts store at truenorthparts.com for Christmas specials that slay the competition. Holiday must-haves this December include ATVs, side-by-sides, personal transportation, and commercial XTVs, not to mention ice fish houses, RVs, gear and accessories. And with snowmobile season arrived, brand new Polaris and Arctic Cat sleds. This is the Christmas gift that guarantees excitement. Pop down and see the wonderful people at Chuds Power Sports taking care of the community. For over 80 years, Manitoba's undisputed power sports superstore, corner of Highway 8 and 231, and online at chudspowersports.com. And while we're talking about Christmas, Donnie and the gang at Manitoba Battery invite you to give the gift of power this year. Now, first and foremost, you got to make sure you get to Christmas, and it's going to be gnarly on the weekend. You can pop by your local Manitoba Battery on Logan Avenue or Dovercourt Drive for a free battery test. And if you need a new battery, you'll get the best price in town. But right now, you can give the gift of power at Manitoba Battery with some great deals, including $5 to $10 off the incredible low prices on power sport batteries, $10 to $20 off booster packs for you ice fishermen and fishing people, $99 for the ice fishing flasher battery combo, 12-foot booster cables for under $20, and of course, you've got gift cards as well for the gift of power from Manitoba Battery. Your local option, best prices in town, beating the pants off the big box stores, best customer service, delivery citywide inside the perimeter, and of course, you can also order it all online at manitobabattery.com.
There's Hess. He'll be back tomorrow. He can't wait. So we had Kevin Cheveldayoff's mid-season address today with the media. Hustler's mid-season address coming tomorrow. Tune in for that one. And the person who was in attendance today, Mike McIntyre of the Winnipeg Free Press. Mike, your thoughts on the current state of the Jets halfway through the year on a 9-game losing streak, and how did this Kevin Cheveldayoff press conference meet your expectations or live up to your expectations?
Well, Kevin Cheveldayoff was a bit of a word salad, which I think we're all kind of accustomed to. So my expectations weren't very high. I wasn't expecting him to make any grand pronouncements or revelations or shock and awe kind of moves today. I guess I'm a little surprised and frankly disappointed that, what I thought were some pretty straightforward questions, that he danced around them the way he did. And, whether it's that he feels he can't totally be honest with how to answer some of the questions, or he doesn't want to be. He's a guy who notoriously keeps his cards pretty close to the vest. We know that he's extremely patient. And, I think what fans heard today, and like, let's not forget, we in the media we're asking questions on behalf of the public. And I have to think that a lot of members of the public, like, at the end of the day, who cares what we in the media think about whether or not our questions got answered? I think the bigger concern is what do fans think. And, I think a lot of the questions that got asked in that 30 minutes today are questions that are on the top of mind for a lot of Winnipeg Jets fans, many of whom are investing their hard-earned dollars in supporting the team. And I have to think, Remo, that there's probably a lot of fans feeling that they got shortchanged a bit today in terms of both the quality and the quantity of the answers. That there was no big takeaway from today. Like, if there was no major talking point, there was no mission statement, I guess, beyond let's keep trying and see if what hasn't worked for 40 games can magically start working. And, Kevin Cheveldayoff, there was no life preserver in his hand for what is clearly a hockey club that is drowning in a lot of ways. It seems like status quo, as hard as that is to maybe believe, that the status quo is going to continue for the foreseeable future here. And, I think that's probably a tough pill to swallow for many fans. Put it this way, I'm way more interested to hear Huss's mid-season address tomorrow. I think there might be a little more meat and potatoes to that one than what we heard today from Kevin Cheveldayoff.
So, Mike, you and I were heading to the press conference, and we were talking about, what could Kevin Cheveldayoff say today that would actually make the fan base go, oh, okay, like ease off and go, okay, yeah, we're okay with you saying this. So where you kind of sit from today's press conference, is safe to say he didn't say whatever we could have speculated could have eased the fans' thoughts going into this homestand.
Yeah, I mean, he didn't exactly offer a ringing endorsement over the state of the prospect pool. And you asked what I thought was a great question, Connor, and it elicited, I think, some really interesting insight. One of the few questions that I feel like actually triggered maybe an informative response was your question about sort of draft and develop. And, it's interesting that he immediately went to the two guys playing at the World Juniors, and it didn't make any mention of really anyone that's on the farm right now. Like, other than Elias Salamonson, none of the forwards, were mentioned. And, I found his mention that maybe last summer, like, clearly he acknowledged that they did an evaluation of maybe where they thought some of their guys were at and felt that they weren't at the stage they would like them to be. And that's why they went out and signed guys like Pearson and Koepke and Nyquist and Tays, and, acknowledged that those really haven't worked out as a whole. But he didn't exactly offer up much optimism or hope for the drafting or the development side of the organization, which had been the lifeblood of this team. And I mean, all this talk about the core, and there was a lot of talk again today about the core. Let's not forget where this core came from. This core is the product of some real shrewd drafting and developing in the early years. Scheifele, Connor, Morrissey, Hellebuck, Lowry. But as you noted, Connor, I mean, the list really gets short when you look at what's now coming up on a decade, really, other than Sandberg and Perfetti. And, the verdict is still very much out on Cole Perfetti, clearly. There's not a lot of guys knocking on the door here. And so, I mean, there wasn't a lot of hope presented to fans today about the state of the prospect pool. There wasn't much hope in terms of seeing some fresh blood injected into this, what I think everybody would agree is a pretty stale lineup. Whether that's young guys with the Moose, your Barlows and Lamberts and Jagers and Chibrikovs and Salomonsons, or some more veteran guys like Gustafsson, Dewar, Anderson, Dolan, DiGiuseppe. Like, no real path for any of those guys, short of injuries, to get on this roster. And, I think fans in this market are pretty smart. Like, had he come out today and said, look, this season has clearly not gone the way we want it to. We're going to pivot. I mean, never would a team come out and say we're going to deliberately tank, but we recognize where we are today. That's not good enough. I take responsibility for that as the GM, but we have a plan on how to get back to where we want to be. That may mean a little more short-term pain here, but we're going to follow these steps. We'll look to maybe sell off some assets, give some younger guys some opportunity in the second half. And then we're really going to look to reload in the summer, hopefully with a really good draft pick that might be able to help us. But again, there was no vision or statement like that. I mean, the takeaway today seemed to be that despite what would arguably be insurmountable odds, this group still feels like it could somehow sneak into the playoffs, and they're going to try and do just that. Although they're going to try and do that, it would appear, by not really doing anything different other than hoping, praying, wishing, whatever, that so many of these one-goal games start to swing the other way. So, I mean, hope isn't a plan, but I heard a lot of hope trotted out today. And, I just think for the public that is looking at the state of the Jets right now, and certainly there's a lot of home games coming up that fans are going to be asked to buy tickets for, I'm not sure that anything they heard today will move the needle a whole lot in that regard. And, that's got to be disappointing.
Very well said, Mike. And I agree. If they come out and said, we're really not happy with how this is going, we're evaluating all of our internal processes, we're going to come back stronger next year, I think people would be okay with that. But as you said, a lot of hoping and praying. And you've mentioned on this show over the last couple of weeks, you were expecting someone to go on waivers or some call-up to made. How surprised are you that there was none of that this weekend after the road trip? And when you asked about it, the GM earlier today, it seemed like they're just going to keep rolling out the same lineup that's on the 9-game losing streak.
Yeah, I mean, that's where I guess you'd like Kevin Cheveldayoff to maybe take a little more responsibility. Like, if he is trying to tell us in not so many words that the state of the farm is so bad that we don't think we have anybody there right now that can make us better. Well, again, who created that environment? Like, that doesn't just appear out of thin air. That he's the one that went and signed a lot of these guys for depth over the summer. He's the one that's drafted these prospects. If things are so bleak that despite 9 straight losses and 22 out of 28 now and being dead last in the league, that you still don't see anything in your own system that could help get you out of this, well, that's pretty dim. And yet that's kind of what he said in not so many words, because the fact of the matter is, I mean, he quickly went back to mentioning guys that did get opportunities earlier this year, but let's not forget why they got opportunities. It was because of injuries. There has been not a single demotion or promotion related to performance. And the idea that players are responsible and being held culpable for where they're at, I mean, that kind of reality would fly in the face of that. And yes, we've seen a Nino Niederreiter healthy scratch here. Obviously, guys like Nyquist, Pearson, Koepke have been healthy scratches. On the back end, Miller, Shen, Fleury, they've kind of rotated. but it's just shuffling the same few players around. And the fact that you look around the league almost every day, teams are making moves via the waiver wire. Yes, there have been some trades that Kevin Cheveldayoff alluded to and said that maybe we didn't have the draft capital to be in on those. Again, if you don't have the draft capital, why is that? It's because of moves you made in the past that clearly now you're kind of paying for. So, the buck ultimately stops with the GM, and yet a lot of what we heard today would almost suggest that it's a mystery of how we all got here and why things are the way they are. And so much of it seems like, is just being pinned on, well, that's the nature of the league. It's a hard league. These things happen. And I agree to an extent that there's some truth to that. It is a hard league. Success one year is no guarantee of success the next year. But we're not just talking about a little slip by the Jets here. We're talking about what is shaping up to be a historical collapse, the kind that the NHL has really never seen before. This isn't about a team that was number one last year and now finds itself, in a wild card spot. This is a team that's 32nd and 9 points out of a spot, and with 7 teams to leap, and with half a season left, which really, on the surface, hasn't done anything to try and get out of it, save for Scott Arneal making these game-to-game adjustments. But when it comes to the GM, he can talk about everybody taking responsibility, trying to find solutions. The bottom line is we haven't seen anything that would appear to be a possible solution from Kevin Cheveldayoff. There has not been a trade. There has not been a player put on waivers. There has not been a player called up other than when injuries warranted it. Nobody's been fired. Everybody remains in the exact same spot. It's Groundhog Day. And I think that's, a source of confusion for a lot of fans and probably frustration.
Yeah, Mike, I think that's the biggest takeaway from the presser for me as well. I'm curious on your thoughts. He was asked about, this homestand coming up and how much he puts on his shoulders for attendance and fans and putting a good product on the ice. I'm curious for your thoughts on what his answer to that question was and what you think the ripple effect of this press conference followed up by maybe another disappointing homestand can have in the fan base, where everyone's in chat today fired up about a 9-game losing streak and that historical collapse that you're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, to be clear, guys, like the attendance is not based on just how last game or how the last few games went. The fact is the Jets have a stronger season ticket base this year than they have the last 2 years. I did a story at the beginning of this season. This is the second straight year they've increased their base by about 500, give or take. So I expect even in the second half, even if all this losing continues, I expect you're not going to see an immediate drop, because the Jets, a big percentage of their fan base comes via season tickets. Now, it's not as big as it used to be. They are more dependent these days on walk-ups and single game sales. And it's why you see more emails these days with special offers, things like that. But in terms of the foundation is actually stronger today than it was a year ago, than it was 2 years ago. But these things are cyclical, and the Jets certainly seem to be trending in the right direction, both on ice and off the ice in the last couple of years. And I would suggest they can ill afford to take a sharp U-turn when it comes to the on ice product. Tickets are expensive. The economy is what it is. People are struggling. And you don't want to make it easy for fans who are maybe on the fence about whether or not they want to support this team. The Jets were a great story in the spring, and, momentum, you could feel it in this city. And I think that carried over into a pretty strong offseason in terms of ticket sales. But for sure, that is always going to be a factor in a market like Winnipeg. I think it's why you'll never hear a term like rebuild trotted out. I mean, mainly because of the core that's in place, and you're not going to do a rebuild when you've got guys like Scheifele and Morrissey and Hellebuck and Connor signed long term. But I also think because they recognize this is a market that can be a little fair weather at times. And so, what's happening on the ice, in a lot of ways, guys, I would have loved to hear from Mark Chipman today. Like, there's probably some questions that only Mark Chipman could answer right now that are, above Kevin Cheveldayoff's pay grade that would be worth asking the owner and the chairman, and certainly the off ice, how this potentially could affect that. And I think it's why, even though they maybe have a funny way of dealing with what should be a lot of pressure to figure this out and fast, because we're seeing kind of nothing happening. I think there is a lot of internal pressure just because of the history of the NHL in this market, and certainly the attendance issues in the last few years. So, that's a very real concern. I don't think it's one that's going to be realized immediately. Like, we're not going to see a half-empty building tomorrow night against Vegas, just as right after Christmas, we saw 2 straight sellouts. I mean, a lot of these tickets are pre-sold, things like that. I expect we're going to actually see some pretty good-sized crowds in the second half of the season. But where the drop-off could happen would be after this season. If this becomes a lost campaign and there's not a lot of hope that things are going to turn around in a hurry, that's where you really would start to worry.
Yeah, and I was surprised to see during intermission of Saturday's game, Elliot Friedman mentioning the Jets looking for scoring. I mean, everyone's looking for scoring, but it almost sounded like the Jets were looking to be buyers when maybe they should be looking to, get some assets for the upcoming seasons. I mean, what moves do you foresee Kevin Cheveldayoff making here as we get towards the trade deadline?
Well, and that's where, one of the things I wish we would have heard more from him about, and honestly, everyone's sort of limited to a couple questions at a time, the way the process works. I would have loved more time with Kevin Cheveldayoff this morning, because I had actually planned to ask some additional questions, including the idea of sort of pivoting on the fly here. And, to what you just said, Remo, at what point is it actually better not to use the word tank, because I don't think you'd ever hear a GM, certainly not publicly, talk about tanking. But at what point does is the juice not worth the squeeze, as the saying goes? And if you're the Jets, I got to think that point is now already. Like, the Jets should not be trading draft picks for immediate help, because what's the best case scenario at this point now? You sneak into the 8th spot in the West and you get to take on Colorado in the first round and probably get destroyed. I'm of the mindset, and I think a lot of fans would feel this way, and I think a lot of fans would understand this if this was the approach by the Jets, that if you're going to fail this year in a deep draft year like this, you're actually better to fail spectacularly. And, I think we look around the league, whether it's watching what Macklin Celebrini is doing in San Jose, obviously a Connor Bedard in Chicago, though he's hurt now, Matthew Schaefer. I mean, just look at what he did Saturday night and what he's been doing all year. Like, not to suggest that the Sharks and the Blackhawks and the Islanders are out of the woods and immediate Stanley Cup contenders, but they all have like exciting young franchise changing players. And how did they get those players? They got it by being really bad for at least a year, if not longer, and a little bit lucky in the case of the Islanders. So if you're the Jets, and who knows, Remo, maybe this is quietly the mindset internally. Maybe this is why they're not doing anything right now to try and kickstart this team. Maybe privately they've recognized that, you know what? Our chances of actually getting into the playoffs are slim and none, and Slim just left town. And at this point, let's just keep going here. we'll just let this keep playing out for a while. Maybe, some of these vets, maybe a Nyquist or pending UFAs, whether it's a Nyquist or a Pearson or a Logan Stanley, like maybe some of these guys can do a few things that gets us something back for them that we could flip them at or near the deadline. I just think, again, this is a smart market. If that really was the plan or is the plan, I think fans would have both appreciated hearing it today and would fully understand. But I don't know if that's the plan. Like, if they're really looking to add an Andrew Mangiapane or whatever it would take to get him, that's got to be a little alarming as well, because then that actually speaks to the plan being that maybe there isn't really a plan. They're just kind of making it up on the fly, and that's not really a way to operate at all over the long term, for sure.
Yeah, you brought up, maybe best case scenario being going on a run and getting into the 8th seed and playing Colorado. Going into yesterday's action, the Jets had lost as many games in a row as Colorado had all season long, and it was 9. Colorado had 2 regulation losses and 7 OT losses.
Bananas.
Jets had lost 9 straight. Colorado did lose their 3rd game in regulation last night, but I'm curious as to pressing on that a little bit more. See, this Winnipeg Jets team does believe they're buyers and they're better than this, and one more middle 6 forward could be a solution to have them go on a run and go on such a run that when they're playing Colorado, they're on such a heater that they believe that they have a chance against Colorado. Like Andrew Mangiapane isn't really moving the needle, at least in my opinion. What kind of moves do you think would move the needle if the Winnipeg Jets, either in the buying or selling department, like Logan Stanley's a guy who's having a career year offensively. Could you foresee them moving him at the deadline this season? Or, maybe some under the radar ones like Iafallo and Niederreiter, vets that have multiple years of term, but would be valuable to contenders. What kind of big moves, either in the buying or selling department, could you see the Winnipeg Jets do and lean more towards maybe selling than the buying?
Well, yeah, because to be perfectly honest, Connor, like I look around the league and sure, there's some guys that their speculation could be on the move, at or near the trade deadline. But those would be the teams, those are likely pending UFAs on expiring contracts that would be brought in as pure rentals by a true contender. And the Jets, if the Jets are shopping in that market, they've completely lost the plot. The Jets should not be shopping in that market whatsoever. I mean, the only market Winnipeg, I guess, should be in right now is if there is a player that could help beyond just right now, that, like you say, has some term. But then I guess the question would be, well, why is the team looking to get rid of that guy? Like, why is someone selling that player? Especially because the seller would be in a better position right now than the buyer. And, that's the unique position the Jets are in. Like, when's the last time a 32nd place team was ever considered a buyer? We see teams every year that are right on the bubble that kind of pull the chute because they have a realistic grasp on their team, and they are still keeping an eye on the big picture. I don't know if that's the mindset of the Jets, because, again, we didn't get any clarity on that today. But that should be the mindset of the Jets. They should be as aggressive of sellers as they can be. Now, we can debate all day how much any of their assets have value right now. Logan Stanley's an interesting one because he's one guy that's probably upped his value through his play this year, whereas I think you can make arguments that there's a number of guys whose value have decreased, or they started the year with very low value and it hasn't gone up one iota. Like Gus Nyquist wouldn't have been a guy in huge demand in any event. And, given that he's got no goals in close to 30 games now, like, is there any real value there? Pearson, Koepke, Jonathan Toews, obviously, Colin Miller. Like, here's the thing: if you're a team and you're looking at a Colin Miller, and you're like, so the worst team in the league doesn't even trust this guy enough to really put him in the lineup. Like, why would we give up anything for him? And again, I extend that to the farm, and going back to what we started this conversation about. If teams around the league are going like, okay, so Brad Lambert's available, Billy Hainala, except you're telling me the worst team in the league isn't even so much as giving these guys a single glance. Again, that's one way to really bring their value down. Like, if anything, if you were looking to maybe move a guy like that that's on your farm, wouldn't you be wanting to bring him up, maybe put him in a position where he could increase his value? And we just have not seen any of that. So, yeah, I mean, I'm almost more interested in, Connor, like, if there's guys we haven't thought about, guys that aren't pending UFAs, whether it's a Nino Niederreiter, a Vlad Nemestikov, a struggling veteran like that, who they approach and just say, you know what, like, if we could get you a change of scenery, you know, maybe a player like that, even though those guys are struggling massively as well. You know, maybe there's someone we're not really talking about. At the end of the day, almost anything and everything should be on the table when it comes to trying to get some value back. The Jets have traded a lot of draft picks. They don't even have a second rounder next year or this coming summer. I mean, whatever you can salvage, either use as your own trade capital when you're now in a position to start adding, like in the summer. But I just don't think that time should not be now for the Winnipeg Jets. It should be about selling, not buying.
Well, Mike, you came on today. It was great hearing your thoughts. We're getting a ton of positive comments in the chat. I thought you really hit the nail on the head. Thank you so much for coming on. Have a safe drive home, as we see that you're in the car, and looking forward to catching up with you next week. Should be a very interesting homestand with Vegas in here tomorrow.
Yeah, looking forward to it, Remo. Enjoy the games this week. Enjoy the week. Thanks to you and Connor. And I will be tuning into Huss's State of the Union tomorrow. That should be a lot of fun as well.
There he is. Yes, thank you very much. There is Mike McIntyre. Check him out in the Winnipeg Free Press on X at Mike McIntyre WPG. We're going to continue the Winnipeg Jets conversation, and the guy who's at just about every game at Canada Life Center, Jets and Moose, Dave Minuk of IllegalCurve.com. We'll hear about more on the Moose prospects and his thoughts on the press conference today. But first, here's Huss.
Clean Line Plumbing, Heating, and Electrical.
All right,
your local leader
on,
for
Dave?
over 40 years. Clean Line Plumbing, Heating, and Electrical is the official plumbing service of the Winnipeg Jets, with 24/7 emergency services for you 365 days a year. Much like Adam Lowry is the back of the Winnipeg Jets, Clean Line Plumbing has the back of Winnipeggers and Manitobans. 204-500-2001 for 24/7 emergency services. You can find out more on Clean Line at cleanline.ca. Shout out and Happy New Year to our friends at Boston Pizza. Boston Pizza is always your best place to catch Winnipeg Jets hockey, NFL action with the playoffs coming up. And, of course, if you are staying at home, you can always get the great taste of BP by ordering online at bostonpizza.com. Christmas may be past us and Boxing Day as well, but great boxing deals remain right now at Royal Sports. Talking to Greg last night, they've been doing crazy business, both in the hockey department with the great deals on sticks through the holidays, and of course snowboards as well for those of you that may be planning a trip some point in the winter once we get into the new year. Pop on down for the best in fan gear, Winnipeg Jets merchandise, NFL just in time for the playoffs, Blue Jays and Major League Baseball and more. It's all waiting for you at Royal Sports, Winnipeg Sports Superstore, 750 Pembina Highway, and on Instagram at Royal Sports Winnipeg. Give them a follow for the latest merchandise drops and sale information. Big holiday cheers to our friends at Winnipeg's favorite local brewery, Little Brown Jug.
You train day in and day out, learning new techniques, approaching new concepts, and living out the thrill of achieving your goals. Building a craft beer is no different. While you spend your hours on the ice, we spend ours here, brewing our trademark beer. Again, and again. Here's to pushing the status quo and challenging ourselves to build something memorable. 1919 by Little Brown Jug.
There's us back tomorrow with the state of the halfway through the season State of the Jets Hustlers address. So you're going to want to tune in. He's been away holding it down, but I'm here with Connor Hrabchak, and we're pleased to be joined right now by Dave Minuk of IllegalCurve.com, Illegal Curve Hockey Show on YouTube, Illegal Curve post-game live after every game. Dave, I imagine the post-games lately have been a bit, a bit heated there in this 9-game losing streak.
Unfortunately for me, or unfortunately for Ezzy and Drew, I've been away. I took some vacation time, so I missed a number of games during this slide, but I was back in time to watch that Ottawa one. So I understand, and of course I was watching it closely from afar. But yeah, the chat has been fired up, to say the least. Folks have lots of opinions as to what's going on with these last place Winnipeg Jets.
Yeah, I think you've just missed the same game 9 straight times, Dave. They fall short, can't score. Yeah, it's the same thing. No, but let's go to today. Kevin Cheveldayoff, you were there, of course, asking questions as well. What are kind of your initial grand takeaways from what was a not so grand press conference from the Jets GM?
Well, Connor, we're always having conversations, and in these conversations, sometimes you have further conversations. And unfortunately, that's mostly what we heard. We didn't hear a lot of anything. I don't think there was a lot of substance, is what folks were hoping for, and that's not what we got. I think the questions were good questions that were asked by the collective media, and I just think that I just don't think the Jets have answers. I really don't. I think that they look at this group, they continue to try and kind of reshuffle the chairs on the Titanic, which is an analogy I've heard used more than once or twice. And that's kind of their mojo. I mean, I asked about, calling guys up from the Moose and whether they're veteran guys or prospects. I mean, my own personal thoughts, which I shared on yesterday's Illegal Curve Hockey Show or post-game show, sorry. And I should say 2 days. No, yeah, it was yesterday. Sorry, my days were a little thrown off. But one of the thoughts I had was, like, initially, if they're going to call guys up, they're going to be the veterans, because they're still going to not acknowledge, and they're not going to say we're not trying to save the season. And then eventually, I think they'll have to accept, when it gets close to trade deadline, they make whatever moves they have to make. If they are unable to turn this thing around, I should qualify it, then you'll start to see the prospects. Then you'll start to see the Salamonsons, you'll see the Zhilkins, hopefully, and the whole, Chibrikov, Lambert. There's a whole host of guys who are going to want to get a shot at the NHL. And I think that that's kind of what folks are hoping for. But I think right now, from what we heard from Kevin Cheveldayoff today, Connor and Remo, it was really just more of the same. It really wasn't anything insightful. I just couldn't help but think of the stark contrast when I was setting up the post for the website. And I was looking at last year's, and I thought, wow, a week later than we did this one, but the team is easily in first and now easily in last. So it's tough times. The joy in Joyland is very low, as former coach Claude Noel would say. But we did not get a ton of answers to any of the questions that were posed to Kevin Cheveldayoff today.
Dave, you're watch more games at Canada Life Center than almost anyone. Remember, Jets, Moose. What have you seen from the Moose this year? And was there any player on the Moose that could come in and make an impact on this Jets roster?
Yeah, I always I don't try and qualify because I don't want to give an answer, but I think that we have to realize that you're not going to get someone up from the Moose who's going to come and have a 30-goal impact. I just don't see it happening. So that's the kind of the thing. But if you need a shot in the arm, if you need a guy who's been playing really effectively, and I really, again, like, I split it into two camps. You've got the veteran camp with guys like Walker Duehr, who in my mind would be the first recall, David Gustafsson, who's been very good, buried a great feed by Walker Duehr the other day. So those two guys, Jared Anderson-Dolan, a guy who you trusted in the playoffs, he's another guy. Phil DiGiuseppe, he's kind of in that veteran group that I think you could look at. But to me, the two primary guys is a Walker Duehr, who I think he's big, he can be fast. He's not always engaged, and we saw that early in the season with the Moose, but he's been very good for Manitoba of late. And again, like I said, he's formed a good duel with David Gustafsson, and even David Gustafsson, whose biggest kind of impediment to his game was his inability to score. And he's not lighting it up. He's got 7 or 8 goals with the Manitoba Moose, but he's burning chances that before weren't going in for him. And I think that's kind of the way I look at it. So if you're asking me from a veteran perspective, those are kind of the way I would look at it. And then from a young gun perspective, they're not lighting it up. They really aren't. Brad Lambert, Nikita Chibrikov, they're getting opportunities. The thing with the Mooses right now is because every line is essentially the same in the sense that any one of those 4 lines can score. Not one line is like getting way more ice time or way more opportunity than the others. And they're getting power play opportunity. They're not burning their chances. So they've been good. They've been effective, but they've not been producing particularly. And the Moose aren't scoring a ton of goals. Well, they do, but it seems to be every second game. But I would say that, there are some guys that, it doesn't hurt. And that's what, when, again, if the season ends up being a lost season in 3 weeks' time or a month or, ahead of the trade deadline, that's when I think you're going to say, okay, well, we're going to sell these assets and we're going to give, Brad Lambert a long window. We're going to give Nikita Chibrikov a longer window. Ilias, that's the way he's preferring now. It's Ilias Salamonson, I was reliably informed, is going to get a huge window, I would think. And maybe even a guy like Braden Yager, Danny Zhilkin for sure. Danny Zhilkin, when I talked to Mark Morrison, the head coach of the Manitoba Moose, I don't remember exactly when, but he told me he's becoming a number 1 center at the AHL level. And that's not easy to do. So for him, he's a prospect who's really seemed to put it together. He's had good health this year, has a lot of tools. And so he's a player that is worth watching. They've had some unfortunate situations with some of the prospects. A guy like Fabian Wagner, who kind of went on a little bit of a tear late in the season after acclimatizing from the SHL. He's been out with injury for it feels like at least a month, if not longer. And of course, Jacob Julian hasn't yet played a first pro game because he suffered an injury in training camp and then suffered another injury when he was looking like he was on his road to health. So those guys are unfortunately in the injured pile. And then of course, Colby Barlow and Braden Yager, those guys are first-year pros. I wouldn't expect them for the Jets other than maybe game 81 and game 82 if you want to give them a shot and give them a taste of the NHL.
Yeah, not necessarily asking about, in the realm of call-ups, moving away from the call-up nature of this question. How have Braden Yager and Elias Salamonson done this season? I think a lot of people can agree, Yager probably Winnipeg's best forward prospect, Salamonson probably their best defensive prospect. What have you kind of seen from those two guys this season? Yager obviously making his pro leap this year with the Manitoba Moose. And then Elias Salamonson was up with the Jets. We saw him a little bit, back down now. How would you categorize those two guys' season so far?
Yeah, I mean, I think they're both performing well and they're both developing well. And Salamonson, I tend to think, and I don't like to be too hyperbolic, but I think he's going to be a very good player. And I've often said that he, to me, is like a right shot Dylan Sandberg. He's just a very effective guy. I mean, folks got a chance to see it in the 4 games that four games that he played, I think, for the Winnipeg Jets, 3 or 4. But the fact is that he's got more bite. He really does. He plays a little bit more aggressively than Sandberg, both around the same size. And I think he is the prospect that I've talked to people in hockey who are, who've played the game, and they tell me he is going to be a very good player. So while I know the Jets prospect pool is sometimes not lauded to be particularly deep or high, Salamonson is definitely a prospect who's a top 4 potential. And, it's funny because when I talked to him, when we were doing our beginning of the season media availabilities with those guys, WST and IC, I should say, and I talked to him, I said, who's your ideal, if you could dream of a partner, whether they're retired or not. He said, Josh Morrissey. Well, Jets fans might be seeing him paired with Josh Morrissey sooner rather than later, and it might turn out to be a particularly good one. Maybe we'll see a give me the kid type of situation with Morrissey in reverse, of course, when Bufflin asked for him. So who knows about that? And then again, Yager is another young kid who's just very smart, and you can see his intelligence. And I asked someone in the organization recently, I said, do you think his size is going to be an impediment? And they didn't think so. Because that to me would be the only sort of limiting factor for Braden Yager. He's not overly large, but he is very smart. He's got a very good shot, and he's figuring out the pro game. So I think that there's definitely something there. I think Jets fans should be excited because, again, when I asked if he's got 2C potential, the answer was yes. So I think it's been the question since Brian Little was a Winnipeg Jet and back in 2018 that will the Jets ever find themselves a 2C, even when he was still the 2C. I'm not saying Braden Yager is that yet. I think he needs a lot more seasoning, but I think he could be there eventually.
Will be interesting to see how that plays out as the season moves along, and the Winnipeg Jets are hosting a number of teams on this upcoming homestand, including Vegas tomorrow night. We got the lines today. Dave, your impressions from today's practice, where they're going with, where we have Connor, Scheifele, Iafallo, Perfetti, Taves, Velarde, Barron, Lowry, Niederreiter, Nyquist, Domestikov, Pearson with Koepke as the extra. Seems like they're doing everything but separating this Connor and Scheifele pair. Is 9 losses in a row time to separate them?
It's a good question. I mean, I've been advocating. I thought that it was time to do it. I actually think that getting Connor or Scheifele with Perfetti would maybe get him going. You need to do something. I mean, he's got to be a scorer. He's got to be a producer. We've been talking about that for a long time now. And to me, if Perfetti's not in that role where you're going to have like success, it's tough because you need that scoring right now. And, are Barron, Taves, and Perfetti going to get it done? Does Lowry, Niederreiter, and Velarde really make a lot of sense? So, again, like I know that the coaching staff likes Iafallo up there with Connor and Scheifele. I understand that. But to me, I would like to see them finally break them up. And I understand we've asked Scott Arneal about it. And you hear from other, coaches who say, I think it was Bruce Boudreau who said something like, your worry is if you break them up and they're the only ones who are scoring for this team, not literally, but almost literally, that if you break those two up and you lose that sort of dynamic, and then when you have to go back to it, they don't have it, then are you in trouble? Now, they've played enough minutes together to me that, you separate them for a few games, it's not going to be the end of the world. And maybe, just maybe, it gets some other guys going. So to me, I understand the idea of Taves and Perfetti and Barron. And I actually think that line could be interesting. I think it could be worth exploring for a game or two. But the problem for the Jets is you just don't have the luxury of time, guys, right? Like, you've got such a huge deficit. You're the 32nd team in the NHL. You really have time to be like, okay, well, let's give this a whirl for 3 or 4 games. So to me, I would probably say it's your, quote, nuclear option time to split up Scheifele and Connor. But it doesn't seem, and we know it's not going to happen for tomorrow based on today's practice setup, that it's going to be happening anytime soon.
Well, Dave, appreciate you coming on, taking the time and providing such a great insight on the Moose and the Jets. Looking forward to seeing more great content at illegalcurve.com and your X account, IC Dave. And I'll be tuned in to the post-game show. Win or loss. Should be a great one.
Win, lose, or IC Drew.
Win, lose, or IC. There it is. Dave Minuk of Illegal Curve Hockey Show, illegalcurve.com. Check him out on YouTube. Got the link in the description. Great website. Dave's on top of it 24/7 with Jets, Moose, Winnipeg hockey news. Let's bring him back in. Connor Hrabchak. Connor, it's been, the show has really flown by. Yeah. It's an hour 45. And we're just about another 45 minutes away from Canada and Finland in the bronze medal game for the World Junior Hockey Championship. I don't think that's something we saw happening coming into the tournament. Canada eliminated by Czechia for the 3rd year in a row. What an incredible game that was last night with all the lead changes, the comebacks, but ending for heartbreak for Canada yet again.
Yeah, I was appreciating this show flying by without us mentioning it at all because I didn't want to think about it. But yeah, Canada out of the World Juniors. Once again, 3rd straight year to Czechia, firmly becoming a massive rival and kind of the kryptonite of Canada at the World Juniors, which is just, I mean, to zoom out from the freshness that was the loss in the semifinal game last night is becoming awesome for the tournament. Like now, every single year moving forward, we'll be able to look at Czechia and have it be a revenge game. And when they're playing each other in the medal rounds, it's going to be, will this happen again? Like this is going to be awesome if this becomes a true rivalry, which I believe now with 3 straight years of Czechia eliminating Canada, it's definitely getting there. But how about both games, Remis? You got that Sweden-Finland classic. Those two teams always play great games against one another. Full 10-minute OT. One guy had 4 breakaways and missed in the shootout, missed on all 5 breakaways. 8-round shootout. Sweden finally wins it. And I'm really looking forward to this Czechia-Sweden gold medal game tonight. Czechia, so impressed with where their hockey program's at. I mean, they looked bigger, faster, and stronger than Canada yesterday. And their forecheck was relentless. And it was so impressive what they were able to do to a team that has 14 first-round picks at forward and Zane Parekh and multiple NHL players that were loaned to them for this tournament. So for Czechia to go in and almost kind of bully Canada was not something that I was expecting, but that's absolutely what they did. And Canada's power play kept them in that game for sure, but it's another late goal against Czechia. Does it for the third straight year, a late goal that beats Canada. And more questions coming for Canada at the World Juniors, where they'll try and get the bronze today. But as we know, the expectation is not bronze in this country.
The players absolutely heartbroken after the game. Credit to the ones who did the post-game interview on TSN. I thought they had great coverage, and I've enjoyed watching the 4K broadcast all tournament. I have to say, Czechia winning 6-4. And you look at that game, Connor. I gotta say, I don't think I've ever seen a double penalty shot. And I see waiters mentioning Chet Hage 2 penalty shots, 0 shots, 0 goals. I've never seen a redo. And you thought that, okay, Canada, they're gonna, they tied it up, they're coming ahead, but it was the late goal with a minute left. Thought we were gonna get overtime, we did not, and. Czechia sealing it on the empty netter after the penalty. And, the officiating with the IHHF, you can see that it's done a bit differently here in the World Juniors than in North American game.
Yeah, for sure. And you had that penalty late in the third period where Michael Misa on the faceoff puts his hand on the puck. That's a penalty in double IHF. So, yeah, some interesting stuff. And I don't know what your initial reaction to that was, Remis, but I was watching with a group of friends and they were asking me, like, what happens here if they rule that the goalie tripped them? And honestly, I thought, like, Canada was going to get a 2-minute power play out of it. But no, reshot, goes back down, does the exact same move. Hage, after the game, said, well, he bit on it the first time, so he decided to go right back to it. And yeah, as waiters pointed out, 0 shots, 0 goals on 2 penalty shots. But Canada all tournament long was this offensive powerhouse that their power play was clicking at 60% and they could outscore their problems. And it just so happened that they ran into a team that they outscored their problems against in the round robin. They beat them, Czechia 7-5 on Boxing Day. But Czechia's defensive structure and their ability to get to the middle of the ice on Canada proved to be the difference. And Canada couldn't really defend all tournament either. They could outscore their problems in the round robin against Finland and Czechia, but they were giving up 4 or 5 goals a game every single game to these good teams. So Canada proved that, they were an offensive juggernaut, couldn't really defend their own end. Czechia brought the forecheck. They were relentless. Canada's power play gave them life, but they weren't able to get it done. And yeah, the 2 games we got yesterday, the drama, the World Juniors are just so awesome. I describe it always as, like young and dumb hockey. They're making mistakes all over the ice, glaring errors, bad turnovers, dumb penalties, undisciplined hockey. It's just so chaotic and so much fun to watch. So this World Juniors has lived up to the hype for me. And I'm excited to watch Czechia, Sweden tonight. 2 Jets prospects, Boumediene and Frey, looking for gold tonight.
Yeah, I want to ask you with them. I know you've got your eye on Sweden. Okay, but how about that double penalty shot? Cam Robinson of Elite Prospects spoke to the director of officiating, said if a goalie committed another penalty on the second attempt, it would have been a misconduct and another shot. If there was a penalty on the third attempt, it would just be a goal. So that's something I had never heard of. What? I don't think you ever see that where a goalie gets a tripping penalty on a penalty shot and you have to reshoot. Sometimes the round robin when Canada is favored by like a touchdown, it's hard to get into. But this was semifinal. This was 2 great games yesterday, and I felt very fortunate to be watching the Canada game simultaneously with Sunday Night Football, which also had lead changes. Now we have the gold medal game tonight, Connor. I know you want to talk NFL Week 18. But what have you seen so far this tournament from Jets prospects Sasha Boumediene and Alphonse Frey on Sweden?
Yeah, I've mentioned them a few times throughout this tournament. I've been so impressed with what they've been able to do so far in this tournament, and they're playing big roles for a good team. So if you're tuning into tonight's game and the gold medal game, Boumediene and Frey, Boumediene wears number 5, Frey wears number 20. They're both very smooth skaters. They both can move the puck. Sweden's power play has been dynamite in this tournament, and Alphonse Frey has been at the point, kind of manning that unit. And last night, Scott Wheeler tweeted this out, the time on ice leaders for that Sweden-Finland semifinal. Sasha Boumedienne, the second highest time on ice player in that game, played over 28 minutes. So the Jets 2025 first round pick, very smooth skater, can really move the puck, and he's playing a massive role on this Sweden team that is going for gold and by all means has been one of the favorites in this tournament the whole time. And Alphonse Frey is a treat to watch on the power play. His ability to fake shots, move bodies around with his eyes, and set up Anton Frondell for a one-timer on one side. And hey, if you're watching Sweden tonight, Ivar Stenberg, a player that is projected to go in the top 3 of the draft, and we're sitting here, the Jets are 32nd, so maybe you can do a little pre-scouting for what the Jets might have at the top of their board next at the draft if the season plays out that way. But as it comes to the prospects in the pool right now, Frey and Boumedienne, I have been super impressed with their ability to skate, move the puck up the ice, and generate offense, and not be taken advantage of defensively as well in their own zone, and really play a 200-foot game. I think it's been a very strong tournament for them both.
Yeah, so 3:30, we have the bronze medal game. We'll have to get out before that. I know people want to watch. I was thankful. I got my time zones mixed up. I thought it was going to be during our show, but it's not, and we'll be tuned in. No Monday Night Football. We'll be tuned into the gold medal game. Some great timing there, and before we move over to football, just on the officiating, that closing the hand on the puck, I thought, yeah, sure, it's a penalty for IHHF rules. It's hitting the puck after a face-off.
Yeah.
And I just thought it was such a lame penalty. I almost feel like something like that is so routine in the NHL is going to happen in the Olympics and cost them one of these weirdo double IHF rules. Like if you hit a guy too hard, it's a penalty, so we'll have to watch out for it.
No,
Connor.
I'm with you on that. Like how many faceoffs has Sidney Crosby taken in his career, and how many times has he reached down and maybe accidentally hit the puck with his hand? Like this might be something that does get called at the Olympics, and it's going to be interesting. But yeah, I mean, Michael Misa, the guy who took the penalty, has played NHL games for the Sharks this year. So he's taken faceoffs and maybe put his hand down to sweep it back when he's in the defensive zone or something like that. And yeah, it's one of those weird rules, like the double IHF rules and the NHL rules have really merged a lot, in recent history, but there are still rules here and there that have, there's gray area for sure. And that's a rule that's not a rule in the NHL. One rule that, they set the precedent early and then called 3 different penalties like this, Remo. But were you shocked that they called goalie interference 3 different times where I thought it was pretty clear the player got pushed in each time? Canada got called for it twice. Czechia got called for it once. The only one I will debate, the last one, Reshny definitely could have slowed up a little bit and made no attempt to slow up. But I just found it interesting that especially the first 2, it was pretty clear that, a player was driving the net or standing in front of the net and a defender pushed them into the goalie, and yet they were the ones getting the penalty. I don't know if that's a double IHF, gray area thing. If you hit the goalie at all, it's a penalty, no matter if you get pushed in. I was going to look at it and didn't, given the Kevin Cheveldayoff press conference this morning. But were you shocked at that too? I was kind of going through that game wondering, wow, I'll have to read the rule book to see if there's a little bit of a difference there with the way goalie interference is called at the double IHF rulebook.
Yeah, Canada, they really lost it at the end of the game. Gavin McIntyre with the unsportsmanlike. He wasn't permitted to come out at the end to shake hands, and Reshny was very hot after. I thought he got bumped a little, but kind of jumped into the goalie. That's what it looked like. Now, that's what it looked like in very slow motion. Maybe he didn't, but that's what I thought on first viewing. And Mike Johnson and Gord Miller, I thought, did a great job last night. Agreed. And he was saying, caught on the hot mic, what more could I have done? I don't know. I thought he kind of jumped in and tried to act like it was a full push, but maybe I'm wrong, and I think that's something we'll have to keep an eye out, Connor, the goalie interference rules for double IHF rules. So something to keep an eye on. One thing, if you're watching the game on Friday night, I have to give a big shout out here. They showed a guy and his son, Corey Kaler from Winnipeg, who drove to all the games on Friday. I want to give a shout out to Corey. He's my realtor, and so I was like, hey, I know that guy, and he's in one of my fantasy pools as well. I know he's a listener to this program. Listener to this program. So what an experience that would be. I know you drove out to Minneapolis or St. Paul with your dad to see one of the games. So awesome opportunity to see, have a memorable trip like that, going to all the games. But I think attendance and the lack of Canadians at the games is something that's being discussed here.
Yeah, like how many people are going to be at this Czechia-Sweden game tonight, Remo?
Oh, man.
It's not going to be good. It's not going to be good, Like the attendance has been really, really bad for this World Juniors. And I think they were banking on a lot of Canadians showing up. Obviously, that hasn't been the case. I mean, there are some cases like myself where we drove down for one game and then left the very next day. But in terms of showing up for the entire medal round and going to a couple games, like, the state of hockey is looking more like, I don't know, the state of football or something. Been pretty dry.
Yeah. Well, I think there's some concerns about the price of tickets and like having to buy packages instead of one game. But we'll see. We'll see what it is tonight for the Canada game and for the gold medal game. But NFL Week 18. What a week it was. You had some dud games for sure, like that Chiefs-Raiders one that Hustler proudly attended, possibly Travis Kelce's last game. But Jacksonville grabbing hold of their playoff spot, Trevor Lawrence looking like a real quarterback now. You did have Pittsburgh winning the division, the Saints-Atlanta game with major playoff implications for Carolina and Tampa. And then we had a number of firings today, the Browns firing Stefanski, Pete Carroll out, the Cardinals firing their head coach after 3 seasons. Biggest takeaway from Week 18. I met your 49ers losing on Saturday.
The 1 seed, man.
Losing the 1 seed. Sorry about that, Connor. Takeaways from Week 18.
Not to make this, to make it about me, because I just won't sugarcoat that. This weekend for sports viewing for me was one of the worst. My Niners lose at home to choke away the 1 seed. Canada gets bounced again by Czechia in the World Juniors. I mean, you want to loop in the Jets there, lose their 9th straight game. Just a banner weekend, if you will. But no, the biggest takeaway for me in Week 18 was that wild Steelers-Ravens game last night on Sunday Night Football, Remis, where, I mean, it started slow in terms of scoring, and it's an AFC North game, so you're kind of like, of course this is going to be 13-10, and this is how this game's going to go. And then in the final 6 minutes of that game, teams couldn't stop scoring touchdowns. It was back and forth. And then Lamar Jackson makes the throw on 4th and 7 to get them into field goal range. Isaiah Likely with a huge catch. And then the field goal goes wide with the game and the division on the line. And I thought Tirico, who calls all of the Sunday Night Football games for NBC, had an incredible call on that missed field goal. The setup, playing up the moment that this was for their season. This was for they're going home if he misses this kick, or they're going to the playoffs. And you got to feel for that kicker who's a rookie, just came in this year and the season fell on his shoulders essentially. And he missed that kick, but just an incredible game. I didn't have high hopes for that game, Remis, from an entertainment perspective. Like I said, I thought it was going to end up 13-10 and be this defensive struggle, but all of those touchdowns in the final 5 or so minutes made it an incredible game and a nice little side game to watch on another TV while we watched Canada and the World Juniors. What was your biggest Week 18 takeaway?
Yeah. First of all, that game yesterday and the call by Tirico, he's like, they interviewed so many kickers trying to replace Justin Tucker. After all of them, they thought Tyler Loop was the guy, and it's a miss. I felt really bad for him. And Boswell, first miss on an extra point in 4 years. And you had the big plays, and I didn't have high hopes. You injured Lamar Jackson. How much is he going to run? And that catch from Likely at the end to get them into field goal range had me jumping out of my seat. And Aaron Rodgers, congratulations to him on getting it done with the Steelers. He can't really throw it deep, but he can dump the ball off to Kenny Gainwell pretty well, who led the team in receiving yards, and missing DK Metcalf for his suspension for hitting a fan. And credit to the Steelers for getting it done somehow. And you look at the games, I'm interested to seeing this Jacksonville team in the playoffs. Last time they were there, Blake Bortles, the quarterback, Trevor, and you were having a number of records being set. We had the sack record by Myles Garrett on Joe Burrow. Some controversy there.
Can I talk about that for a second?
Yeah.
No, okay. The sack was I thought like a pretty normal sack. Like, I don't know, Joe Burrow really had nowhere to go. Myles Garrett wrapped him up. The Bengals head coach, after having an issue with the all-time sack record being broken and them stopping the game, I thought was ridiculous. He's like, we're fighting for our lives here. The Bengals have won like 5 games, Remis. That game meant absolutely nothing for them. For both teams, it meant absolutely nothing except for draft position. If there was ever a time to stop a game for an all-time record, it was that game. Like, literally no one else cared except for the sack record. Like, I don't know how the Bengals head coach was, kind of dumbfounded that they stopped the game, that an NFL record that has stood for 30 years was broken against his team in a meaningless Week 18 game. Like, I don't know what you thought of that, but I just found that to be completely ridiculous. Like, how did you not see that coming if Myles Garrett was going to get a sack? Like, obviously they were going to stop the game. This is pro sports. This is what they do.
It's funny. I remember when Strahan, sacked Favre for the record so many years ago. People were accusing Favre of laying down, so it just gave me a lot of flashbacks, a lot of records being broken. Caleb Williams became the all-time single-season passing yards leader for the Bears, which shows, since Eric Kramer, which shows just how terrible all their quarterbacks have been. It, took however many years and an extra game to finally break that record. So you had records, you had meaningless games. It was interesting if you're wagering or if you're still playing fantasy. But we do have the playoff matchups. Rams against Carolina, they won, so they get Carolina. San Francisco and the Eagles. San Francisco, in the 6th seed now? So the dream of never leaving the Bay Area on the way to the Super Bowl is dead. The Packers-Bears NFC North matchup. Texans, Steelers, that's a Saturday noon. I don't know if they've put out the time, but that's the Saturday game if I've ever seen. Bills, Jags. The Bills going to Jacksonville, and the Bills just had their final game at their stadium. Some nice tributes there. And the Chargers and the Patriots. Those are the games, Seahawks and Broncos getting the byes. We've had a couple. The Blue Jays had the big signing of the Japanese utility infielder. Sorry, I have to grab his name as
Okamoto?
well. Yeah, so exciting there. And I keep seeing the Blue Jays. Yeah. They're in on Bo Bichette. They're in on Bregman and Kyle Tucker. So big offseason for the Jays after the World Series berth. And the Bombers offseason continues. Derek Taylor noting they released Chris Kolinkowski, the center, and they've re-signed defensive tackle Tanner Schmeckel. And a spot open there with Jake Thomas retirement. So the making off-season news. Connor, I don't know if you want to weigh in on any of that or go over
I just
the
saw
lines
a tweet.
Here.
Yeah, we can go over the lines in a moment. I saw a tweet from Taylor Allen too, from the Winnipeg Free Press, who said, the Bombers released center Chris Kolinkowski, who was a pending free agent. And Taylor Allen wrote, real good guy with a great story, out of the league in 2019, drove 8 hours to a Bombers free agent camp in Cincy, signed to their practice roster, then became a reliable starter for several years. So Chris Kolinkowski has been here a long time. One of those old linemen that has just been here throughout the Zach Collaros era, if you will, and the highs of it with the Grey Cups and the Grey Cup appearances the last number of years. And looks like the Bombers O-line, a place where we've talked, Remis on, and Huss has too on this show, about the O-line being a spot that the Bombers used to be so dominant in and maybe aren't as dominant anymore and need to improve moving forward. So it looks like they'll be making some changes there going into next season.
Yeah, I feel like if in any league, the CFL, where there's so much player movement in the offseason, the Bombers will be able to bounce back and make a run and try to get back into winning a playoff game, as they were not able to do. I almost forget that game in Montreal was. I was like, oh, they didn't, they don't make the Grey Cup, you think, oh, they didn't even make the playoffs this year. But no, they lost to Montreal. Tough one. That was where they almost had an incredible comeback.
Yeah.
But here, let's look at the lines tonight. World Juniors, we're checking out Cool Bet. And don't forget, if you want to get in the poker tournament, Wednesday is your last chance to qualify for next Monday's tournament, where some winner will be going to Costa Rica with Hustler and Jeff. So Wednesday, 8 p.m., I will be in on that. I'm looking forward to getting back to the tables. But here's the lines. We have Canada minus 219 on the money line against Finland. You wonder, Canada, you've seen in the past, there's hard to come back from the disappointment of not winning the gold. And do they mail it in for the bronze? We will see. They did play last night. Finland, not as quick of a turnaround, plus 175. And in the final, very even, Sweden minus 118 against Czechia minus 103. You tipped me off on Sweden against USA earlier.
Yes,
in the
I was in on that.
You called that upset, Connor. I was thinking of you when I was watching it. So your read on tonight's action.
Yeah, I don't know if I have as strong of a read going into tonight's game. I really liked Sweden coming into the tournament, and based on the last 2 years, I know people would kind of view USA in another tier, but they were returning a less talented team. And then for that game specifically, Remo, Cole Hudson, USA's best defender, was not in the lineup as well. So Sweden blew them out. I think the 6-3 score in that game did kind of flatter the US. But for tonight's game, it's a pick 'em. It's pretty even. I'm not really sure. I think it's going to be a close game. I can't really see Sweden taking a massive blowout win or Czechia taking a massive blowout win. I will be interested to see, though. It felt like when we were watching Czechia-Canada, we spent over half of that game watching the Canadian defensemen looking to go retrieve pucks below their own goal line and trying to break the puck out and couldn't. It felt like that was the story of the game. Czechia's forecheck was just all over them. Sweden has a lot of very mobile, puck-moving defensemen. If they can beat Czechia's forecheck, I think they win this game. But Czechia is a big, fast, strong team that took it to Canada, who has all the talent in the world, as we know, with all of the first-round picks. So I think this is just going to be an awesome game, and I think the real battle is going to be won kind of below Sweden's goal line. If they can get their breakout on point and beat this Czechia forecheck, I think they win. If Czechia can impose their will like they did against Canada, I think Czechia wins a gold. And Czechia winning a gold, I mean, again, they're becoming a bit of a rivalry for Canada, but what a great story that would be. And then Sweden, it would be another choke for them as they choke in the middle rounds year after year. This is the thing with Sweden, right? So them getting a gold and these Jets prospects pulling it out for Sweden would be an awesome outcome too. So I think it's going to be a great game regardless.
Yeah, so if you're a Jets fan, we'll cheer for Sweden with the two prospects, Boumediene and Alphonse Frey, and also cheering against Canada's new biggest rival in the World Juniors, Czechia, who would have usually, we didn't get Canada-US this year, but now, it's been Canada-Russia in the past. Russia not in the tournament. Canada-Czechia. We got some hockey tonight. Got to get your fantasy lineup set if you're in a weekly league, Connor. Check the Monday games. Utah Rangers, even that's a pick 'em. Ducks in Washington. Red Wings and the Senators, that's the prime game. The Senators minus 153 favorite. Calgary minus 147 favorite over Seattle. And Seattle was in a wild card recently. So, these games having playoff implications. And the Wilds continue their Western road trip. They're playing the Kings, who are here on Friday. That's pretty close to a pick 'em. That's a nice late night one. Wild, who are rolling since Quinn Hughes, even before that acquisition. Kings minus 101, Wild minus 116. Any game that you're particularly interested in watching tonight?
Yeah, that Wild Kings game, I think, is the game of the night, if you will. I'll be interested in Red Wings Senators too, because that's a game with big playoff implications in the East. Like we've said many times, all of these teams are so close, so bunched up together. The Ottawa Senators have 3 games in hand on the Detroit Red Wings and are 7 points back. So a win against them head-to-head tonight would be huge for them in that division and in the Eastern Conference. And then just browsing the standings here, Seattle is actually currently in a wild card spot, Remis. They're at 43 points. They're occupying the number 1 wild card seed. LA is in the second wildcard spot at 43 points as well, but they have one more game played. So that Wild Kings game for me will be a good one. And I'll also throw Ducks Capitals there kind of under the radar as one that I'm interested in tonight. No Tom Wilson for the Caps. They said he's day-to-day after exiting with an injury the other day. We were watching that for Team Canada purposes, of course. But a lot of good games on the slate tonight. I think I'll be watching Wild Kings late into the night.
Yeah, it seems like every player who got named in the rosters for the Olympics getting banged up. Bo Horvat, tweaked his knee. He's fine. Didn't Seth Jones? He got actually a legit injury. We're waiting to hear about that. And Tom Wilson sounds like he's going to be fine. So injuries are going to happen, and we'll see if it does affect the Olympics. And NFL playoffs, Connor, we've got our games. Oh, Panthers. So Panthers Rams is the early one, not the Houston. That's the Monday night game. Houston at the Steelers.
So Houston had made the playoffs like 8 of the last 10 years or something, and all 8 times they were the first Saturday game, and this is the first time they aren't. Weirdly enough, yeah,
crazy. Okay, so first, I actually hadn't even looked at the schedule. I was so dialed in on the Chevy press conference and getting ready for the show. Rams Cardinals. Rams 10.5-point favorites on Saturday. That's the first game. A nice Sunday nighter, Packers Bears. We just had this game a couple weeks ago on Saturday night. Bears -1-point favorites. And we have Bills Jags Sunday at noon. Bills -1-point favorites in Jacksonville. How crazy of an upset. This is Josh Allen's year to finally get it done with no KC, no Baltimore, no Lamar Jackson. But we'll have to see if Trevor Lawrence has something to say about that. The Eagles favored at home -4 against your 49ers. We've got the West Coast team traveling east for that one. And the Patriots, Sunday nighter, hosting the LA Chargers -3.5-point favorites. And we mentioned the Texans road favorites in Pittsburgh. Connor, what's your matchup of the week here? Do they still call it Super Wild Card Weekend, or they got rid of that? Was only the first year thing. I think it's just Wild Card Weekend now.
Oh, okay. It's no longer Super.
It was the first time. So the first year they introduced this extra game, when they changed it, they called it Super Wild Card, and then I think that was only for 1 year, and they just dropped it because now it's regular. They don't want to make you think. I don't know. It's market. It's just marketing. This is marketing 101.
Yeah, you're right. It's just Wild Card Weekend now. It's no longer Super, guys. It's just a normal Wild Card Weekend. Going back to Week 18 for a moment, Remis, how NFC South was it that the Panthers lost head-to-head to the Bucks and then still got in because, the Falcons beat the Saints, triggering a 3-way tiebreaker that the Panthers actually had over the Bucks, despite that game being put in primetime because it was a playoff game, essentially. I just found that to be so hilarious. And now they're 10.5-point dogs at home, Remis. But if you'll remember, a few weeks ago, the Panthers took it to the Rams. They beat the Rams at home. That was probably their best win of the season, was the Panthers win over the Rams. So I don't know, 10.5 seems like a lot for a playoff game, but the Panthers looked terrible against the Bucks and only got in because of a technicality. So I don't know. That's definitely not my game of the week, though. I'm looking at that Bears-Packers game. I think that'll be a really good one. Obviously, I'm biased, but Niners-Eagles, not feeling great, given the Niners struggled against the Seahawks, and the Eagles are kind of built very similarly. Great defense, great run game. Niners going on the road. Hopes are not high. But that Bills-Jags game, too, this is definitely Josh Allen's year. No Patrick Mahomes, no boogeyman to go through. They've been eliminated by the Chiefs, it feels like, every single year. He's not there this year, but the Jags, since acquiring Jacoby Myers, their offense is coming along. They'll be good, too. I don't know. There's been some good, really good wildcard weekends in the past and some not so good ones. I think this is one of the better ones, Remis. I don't know if you agree, but I like a lot of these matchups. Maybe the only one I won't watch is Rams-Panthers, but everything else I'm intrigued by.
This Bills-Jaguars has the highest team total at 51. I feel like you're going to see a lot of points. And I want to know, is Trevor Lawrence actually good now, or did he just beat up on a bunch of bad teams? One thing the Jags have a big advantage is their kicker, Little. I mean, he can kick it, 65 yards? I mean, when you're getting the ball at the 35 and only need to get to the 50 to kick a field goal, that is a big advantage. They have, and we saw last night kicking. It comes into play. We don't like it. It's not fun when you get into field goal range and they don't make it, but that's why, they're there. And this Texans-Steelers game, the lowest team total, 39 points. I don't know, Texans, they're favored by 3. They have this great defense. I think they should be able to get pressure on Aaron Rodgers, but something about the Dome team going into Heinz Field kind of scares me. And, we'll see how the Texans offense, not exactly the greatest at times. They did rest a number of players yesterday, and their defense got lit up by, Leonard from
Riley
the
Leonard.
Colts, the guy who they wouldn't play for Phil Rivers, who can throw with a deep ball to Alec Pierce, apparently. So that game probably the lowest on my power poll of games, and I think 49ers-Eagles, I think that'll be closer than the minus 4. I would take the 49ers at first glance with the points. But Brock Purdy in big games, how many times, Connor, in the last couple of years, the 49ers need to win a big game, for playoff implications or MVP implications, and he comes up very short. Sunk my season when he lost the MVP to the Ravens. Remember they played that game?
That was on Christmas. It was essentially the MVP bowl because it was Lamar and Brock Purdy at the top, and the Ravens blew him out. Yeah, that ruined my Christmas. But that was a few years ago. No, but this year, the Bears game on Sunday night, Brock Purdy was amazing. That was a big game for sure.
Oh, he was amazing. That's true.
He was, right? So I don't know. It's these. I was shocked they could only put up 3 points against the Seahawks. The offense was absolutely red, sizzling hot, and they only could muster up 3 points. So it's almost like, which 49ers team are we going to get against the Eagles? The red hot offense version or the one that can't move the ball?
Yeah, I think same with the Bills too. Josh Allen looks like he can move the ball, and they had some other dud games. But it was Mitch Trubisky moving the ball for them yesterday. Just a weird week where some games have playoff games, some games are preseason. But looking at the futures, MVP seems like Stafford locked it up with that performance over Arizona to get them that game against Carolina. They really wanted to win. And Super Bowl, man, Seahawks are the favorite for the Super Bowl. I guess they have the bye.
1 seed.
And then the Rams plus 500, Broncos plus 650, Eagles, Patriots, Bills plus 1,000, and the Jags plus 1,500. I don't know. I'd throw down on them. Where's your 49ers? Oh, they're back to
way
plus
down
2,000?
Because they have a very tough path is their issue as the 6th seed. They'll have to start against the Eagles, and then assuming there's no upsets, then they'd have to go beat the Bears, and then assuming there's no upsets again, they'd have to go into Seattle and beat the Seahawks just to get to the Super Bowl. So that's 3 really tough teams that they'd have to beat.
I guess they would have to. The Seattle ones. Are the Bears good? I still don't know. They might be how many wins do they have? 12.
12. Yeah.
So they must be the worst 12-win team. I don't know if I buy them. They're plus 1,900 to win the Super Bowl. They got among the lowest odds.
Yeah.
Carolina at plus 20. Was that 20,000?
20,000.
Holy crap.
That's not happening, unfortunately. Plus the Panthers, no.
That's not. No. And there's the Steelers plus 6. I don't think they're going to win. I don't know if I have a pick at this time. And the Rams, they have the defense. Rams or Seahawks, crazy. Well, we'll see how it plays out. Plenty to talk about. I know Hustler's going to want to weigh in tomorrow. Okay, Ray says Bears are 11-6.
Okay.
I don't know if I buy them. But we'll see on Saturday against the Green Bay Packers. Well, Connor, we've said it all. Talk about the Jets for extended period. Kevin Cheveldayoff, midseason address. The Jets on a 9-game losing streak. Vegas comes in here tomorrow. And NFL Week 18, World Juniors. Covered it all, Connor. It's been so great having you on the show today. Let people know what you've got cooking. I know it was a exciting Sunday Live yesterday and post-game coverage throughout the week.
Yeah, post-game coverage, of course, coming up this week. But if you missed it, WST Sunday Live yesterday talked a lot about the draft and develop kind of conundrum that the Winnipeg Jets find themselves in, and their inability to draft and develop players since 2017, besides Perfetti and Sandberg. So we talked a lot about that. I'll have more on our socials at Sports Talk WPG. I did a few hits down from Canada Life Center on the Kevin Cheveldayoff press conference. Tomorrow, the Jets will take on the Vegas Golden Knights. I'll have a game day report up on the Instagram and TikTok and all of those things. So if you're not already following us at Sports Talk WPG on Instagram, always love filling in on these 1 o'clock shows, Remis, but especially today. These Monday shows are awesome. There's always so much to talk about, but a lot more to talk about today, I'd say. And I think we reached, roughly 600 people at one point. People are fired up. People have takes, and we love to hear them in the chat. So shout out to everyone who is here with us today, and thanks for having me for this full show. I had a blast.
This was awesome, Connor. You were there at the press conference asking the questions, trying to get answers. And it was an exciting one. We had one of our biggest shows, of 2026 for sure, with over 600 people.
Put it on the list.
Over 600 people watching. We peaked. That's the most we've had in a while. We know that there's a lot of passionate fans here in Winnipeg, and they're all showing up with their opinions as the chat was buzzing. So thanks everyone for chatting, especially Tico and Apolli, who dropped a number of super chats, including this one that I did not read out. Shout out to Paulie. I read out his... Let me see. Where is it in here? Let's see. He says, remember when everything was on the table, and yet a month later, 55 and Casey joined at the hip. Another non-move. So there's Tico and Apolli commenting on the Jets' transactions or lack thereof. So Tico and Apolli, thank you for the super chat. T-Will, and thank you to our sponsors, Uptown Alley, Rolly's Transfer, St. Vital Dental, Canadian Club, Princess Auto, Chud's Power Sports, Manitoba Battery, Clean Line. We'll have the Jets lines tomorrow. Clean Line, Jets lines, Little Brown Jug, Boston Pizza, Royal Sports, Cool Bet. I mentioned the Poker Wednesday poker. Get in touch with us if you want info on if you need trouble, having trouble joining. Search for WST among the tournaments. And it is WST night at the Jets game. Remember, the Jets, Kings, Friday. Anze Kopitar's last appearance in Winnipeg. Surefire Hall of Famer, Slovenian hockey legend, Stanley Cup champion, two-time Stanley Cup champion, Connor. So there it is. Again, said it all. Connor, thank you so much for coming on. For Connor Hrabchak, I'm Michael Remis. This has been another edition of Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily.
Oh, my God! Oh! Shut it down! Let's go home!
Thanks for tuning in to Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast feed at winnipegsportstalk.com.